Chapter 101, The Next Hokage. At the main gate of the Uzumaki station, Masahiko was diving back and forth there. He was feeling a little bit reluctant and afraid because he didn't know how to face Yuriko. After a long silence, Masahiko clenched his teeth and finally made up his mind, but suddenly a dark shadow blocked his vision. A slightly familiar back hit him directly. Masahiko found himself a bit unlucky these days. He was hit by Uchiha Kagami not long ago, and now he got knocked to the ground again. Walking backward, Masahiko sighed, and didn't bother to look up. This kind of strength and clumsiness only possessed by my second-hand disciple. Sure enough, Kanichiro's familiar voice emitted, "Grandpa, are you okay?" Masahiko looked up and reached out to Kanichiro, waiting for the latter to help him get up. The backlash of the Hachiman didn't get eliminated entirely yet. It might also be because Masahiko has become lazy due to his old age, and didn't want to stand up on his own. But who would know that halfway up Kanichiro will let go of Masahiko's hand. Masahiko hit the ground hard again, then he glared at him, which made Kanichiro couldn't help but cover his face with his hands. "Woo, Grandpa, I'm sorry, you look so much like my dead sensei. I thought you were him for a second. That's why I was surprised yet, just like the way you're staring at me right now." Masahiko didn't know what to say, he was speechless. He simply sat on the ground, watching his disciple crying. After a full minute, Kanichiro wiped his tears to find that Masahiko was still sitting on the ground. He quickly stepped forward to help him, feeling embarrassed. Masahiko got up, but Kanichiro didn't give him a chance to say anything. He turned back, then shouted, "Yuriko! Come out, there's an old grandpa, who looks very similar to our sensei." Masahiko's face turned really dark as some of the Uzumaki clansmen swarmed out watching. "Really? He really looks like the elder." "Yeah, but he's older." "No, I think the elder is older." Hearing the sound, Yuriko also came out from the mansion. Upon seeing Masahiko, Yuriko blinked, then rubbed her eyes in disbelief. After clenching her fist, she rushed toward Masahiko aggressively. Masahiko's heart sank in sorrow. Sure enough, Yuriko is blaming me. Unbeknownst to anyone, Yuriko fastened her pace walking toward Masahiko, then she stopped next to Kanichiro and punched him right in the face, and he flew out screaming. "Stupid! You can't even recognize our sensei." With tears in her eyes, Yuriko hugged Masahiko. "Sensei! I thought you've left me too." Tears start to come from out of her eyes. Masahiko sighed, then he looked back and waved his hand to the crowd, signaling them to go back. "It's really the elder. The great elder is still alive. With his presence, the next Hokage will definitely belong to the Uzumaki clan." After more than 10 minutes, Yuriko calmed down and took Masahiko in. Masahiko explained everything to Kanichiro and Yuriko, then he stopped for a second before saying, "Ashina's death is my fault. If I didn't cause all of these things in Kumigakure, then he would have been alive today. Tobirama and I wouldn't have to go to Kumigakure, and you wouldn't have to go to the battlefield. Things would have been better." Yuriko was silent for a moment, then she shook her head and said, "Sensei, I don't blame you. If I were stronger, if I did better, Ashina wouldn't have to die." Masahiko didn't say anything back. He knew the plot very well. Ashina died because of him, and nothing she says will change that fact. Since the moment I decide to save Tobirama, I know that some things will be different. But I didn't know that the first impact would be this severe. Masahiko then walked into the hall with Yuriko. They went silent for a moment, then Masahiko asked, "What about Nanako and Gensuke?" "They went to visit the small clans in Konoha one by one. It's related to the election of the Hokage position, of course. But since Lord Second is still alive, then I will go to find them." Yuriko replied. "No need, so many clansmen saw me coming back, the news of my return already spread, they will hear the news soon. After all, unlike the Uchiha clan, who only Izumi and Kagami know that Masahiko is back from their clansmen, a lot of people in here saw him, the news of his coming will become soon widespread in both Konoha and the Uzumaki." Sure enough, within an hour, the Uzumaki mansion has become a gathering place for the major family figures in Konoha. Everybody came and greeted Masahiko, then they began to ask about Tobirama's situation. Masahiko was too lazy to explain to them one by now, so he gathered them all in one place and sat together. Nanako and Gensuke also came back a little bit late, thus, Masahiko didn't have much time to explain. Masahiko waited until all of the major and minor clan in Konoha gathers. Masahiko looked around the hall, and almost all the major and minor clan representatives already gathered, Tobirama's 6 disciples, the Hyuga, the Uchiha, the Aberame, the Nara, the Akimichi. Tobirama is alive. Masahiko's first sentence caused all kinds of expression around the place, some surprises, some disappointments, and he carefully inspected it all in their eyes. But Tobirama is injured, and he will need more than half a year to recover. And during that time, Konoha must find his replacement, a third hokage to lead the village in the time being. Unexpectedly to everyone present, they all became so quiet. After the silence, Masahiko looked at Gensuke. Obviously, counting on Masahiko's influence, Gensuke's hopes of becoming the next hokage increased greatly. Nara Patriarch shook his head then sighed, "Elder Masahiko, so are you supporting Gensuke to be the next hokage?" Masahiko smiled and looked at Gensuke, who seemed excited, then he sighed, "Nope, I will do it instead of Gensuke." Everyone in the room felt shocked for a while, but most of them felt relieved too. Obviously, Masahiko, as the hokage, was much better than Gensuke. Masahiko looked at everyone, "Since there's no objection, then let me announce my first decision as the hokage." Masahiko looked at Gensuke, who seemed clearly disappointed. "From today, the Uzumaki station in Konoha will be cancelled. Gensuke, you will gather the clan and go back. When Tobirama finally recovers, I will return, and we will build our own country. And of course, there will be no change for the alliance between Konoha and Uzumaki." Masahiko noticed how everyone showed a surprised expression. He sighed, and secretly thought, "I didn't expect the Uzumaki will have to leave Konoha. The Uzumaki population is increasing at unprecedented rate. It's already too late today. Let's head back to our respective clan and spread the news. And tomorrow, I will hold an elder meeting in the Hokage building to discuss some issue in Konoha." One by one, all the clan members left the room. Masahiko looked at Gensuke, who seemed surprised and anxious, then smiled, "After we establish our own country, you will be the leader, are you okay with that kind of pressure?" "You can rest assured, I will work hard." "Work hard, then I will have to work hard too." Masahiko sighed. Tobirama's injury and Ashina's death taught Masahiko that his actions could affect others' people's life. Whether it's small or big, whether it's near or far, whether it's immediate or latent. From now on, the Naruto world is different than what he knows prior. At the same time, Hiruzen, who has just left the Uzumaki mansion, went back with Danzo. "Danzo, did you hear that? Sensei is still alive. Isn't that great?" Hiruzen said excitedly. Danzo hesitated and stumbled, yeah, it's great. Why did I feel so disappointed when I first heard that Sensei is still alive? No, this must be my imagination." Chapter 102, Being the Hokage. The next day, at the Hokage building. Masahiko came early, then stood in front of the enormous transparent glass window, overlooking the entire village. "I actually became the Hokage, this is really unexpected." Masahiko shook his head, and all of a sudden, an Umbu flashed in. Looking at the familiar mask and sensing the familiar chakra, Masahiko frowned, "Guz, are you the only Umbu around here? Why are you showing up in front of me every time?" Guz didn't answer. Masahiko then smiled and said, "Nothing? Okay, the more familiar they are, the better. You'll be responsible for delivering and receiving my letters." "Substitute Hokage, I'm the Umbu captain." "Oh." Masahiko paused, "Then go find me responsible for my letters, a messenger." Guz flashed out, then Masahiko shook his head, "Did he just add the word substitute while addressing me? Who does he think I am, Ichigo?" Masahiko murmured, then he sat on the chair behind the Hokage's desk. C-level tasks applications, B-level tasks applications, C-level tasks applications. Picking up these 3 documents one by one, Masahiko's brows grew tighter and tighter. What the hell is this? Does Hokage also approve task entrustment personally? No wonder that Tobirama was always busy. I think it's necessary now to set up a task delegation department, and the Hokage will take responsibility for looking at the S-class tasks only. So, until I establish that department. Masahiko quickly ran through the documents, and after a while, he divided them into 4. C-level, B-level, A-level, S-level, and some others. Masahiko then looked at the uneven stacks of documents, then nodded with satisfaction. Another umbu then flashed in, "Substitute hokage, the three elders are here." "I know, let them in." Masahiko waved his hand and wondered in his heart, so much for confidential, can they at least send someone I don't know? This guy is caller Uran impossible. Is there only 2 people in the umbu department? 1 minute later, the 3 elders entered the room and sat on their respective seats. Masahiko sat in the center then leaned back on his chair sighing, feeling a little bit emotional. "The last time I was at this meeting Hashirama was the hokage, I didn't expect that the next time would be me the one sitting in this chair." The 3 elders glanced at each other, then Uchiha Izumi shook his head, and said with a light tone, as if he was whispering, "Masahiko grandpa, you're just a substitute hokage." Masahiko glanced at him, but didn't contradict. "Let's get down to business. If you don't have anything useful to say, then just go back." The 3 elders seemed stunned for a while, they really didn't have anything to say. Masahiko looked around then realized that he was the one who called up this meeting, and he didn't have anything to say too. Hesitating for a while, Masahiko said, "Although the Kumigakure managed to ambush both Tobirama and me, during the battle, we managed to kill all of their elite shinobi. Their famous Gold and Silver Horn brothers were killed, their leader is eliminated, the only S-rank shinobi left is the one estimated to be the 3rd Raikage. They're currently crumbling, so what are your thoughts? I'm gonna take the liberty to ask, but are you still capable of fighting now?" asked the Nara Patriarch. This also happened to be the same question that the other 2 elders wanted to ask. Masahiko hesitated to answer, "I can still fight, but I better not push myself for the time being. The side effects of the Hachiman technique haven't been wholly lifted yet, and Masahiko doesn't want to waste any more witness points on the physique attribute. It's better if we leave it this way." Nara Patriarch said, "Currently, Lord Second is still recovering, Mito is pregnant, and your condition is not good, and Tsunagakure hasn't really abandoned their aggression according to what you said. Kumigakure is crumbling, and they won't be able to recover from this easily. It will be better to settle accounts with them half a year or a year later before they do." Masahiko nodded. 1 year? Give them 10, and they will not recover. In fact, if the second Tsuchikage wasn't there, I wouldn't have been hurt this much. Just wait until I recover completely, I will go to him in person to settle the accounts. Masahiko was planning to put his head against Muse this time. The 3 elders glanced at each other without objection. Finally, Tsunagakure, as the victorious party. Masahiko was about to say something, but the Hyoga Patriarch interrupted, "Substitute hokage, I think Tsunagakure has already sent you an alliance treaty." Masahiko paused for a moment, then dug in the 4th stack from before. This Masahiko picked up the document and glanced at it. "It's really an alliance treaty and it's full of sand." Masahiko looked at 3 elders and took out a drawing that had already been prepared. "This is the only thing useful that I've come with from my last trip. A weapon drawing, and I will hand it over to you for arrangement. Keep it confidential." The 3 elders take a look at the drawing, then frowned. "Grandpa Masahiko, some of the materials for this weapon are not available in our village. Then go to Tsunagakure and ask them for any lacking materials. After they got their ass kicked by Mito, how dare they come to ask for alliance without paying anything? Don't worry, the news of Tobirama and me are still alive will most likely make them agree." Masahiko said. "Yes, and if they don't agree, we will attack them." Izumi got all worked up. Masahiko looked at him and smirked, "Well, if we were to attack them, I will expect the Uchiha clan to send more people next time." Izumi leaned back on his chair and closed his eyes, trying to recover. For the time being, Konoha shouldn't take the initiative to fight any foreign village, and it's estimated that no one will dare to provoke us too. The 3 elders nodded at each other. "No objection or something?" Masahiko asked. Upon seeing that no one has responded, Masahiko smiled and picked the documents on his desk. "Now the C-level tasks will be reviewed by Uchiha Izumi. B-level is for you, Hyoga Patriarch. And A-level belongs to you, of course, Nara Patriarch." The 3 elders looked at each other, then Izumi quickly said, "Grandpa Masahiko, I would love to help, but there's something that has to be done. It's related to my family." "Don't worry, no one will jump off the cliff unless you refuse to help." Masahiko waved his hand. Izumi's expression changed, he sighed then and began to review the task's applications. "Substitute hokage, I really have something to do." Hyoga Patriarch felt like Masahiko had nothing he could use on him. "Is there something wrong?" You know, these days, I started thinking that maybe I should learn the Hyaga's cursed seal. Hyaga Patriarch's voice couldn't be heard for some time after that sentence, while next to him, Nara Patriarch had already begun to work. Look, how good he is! The Hyaga Patriarch took a deep breath, then started working on the documents. Masahiko looked around, then he picked up the last stack of documents, counted it, then smiled. Only 4 papers needed to be reviewed by him. Intel on Land of the Frost. The northern part of the Land of Frost has become uninhabited. Most of the civilians and shinobi have migrated to the Yugakur, which once again fell into chaos. Their land got destroyed because of my last shot at the Tsuchikage, but that was necessary, I'm sorry. Masahiko murmured and put the document aside. S-level mission, a politician from the Land of Fire is ready now to pay a friendly visit to the Land of Lightning, and they've requested some ninjas for protection. Masahiko looked left and right, then twitched his mouth and sighed. He shook his head then, and took a pen, and wrote 5 big words, let him die by himself. Takigakur intelligence, half a month ago, Takigakur shinobis raided Iwagakur. Because the Iwagakur and Kirigakur are having a fierce battle, the village was left vulnerable, and the Takigakur successfully managed to rob the Nanabi. Takigakur wanted the Nanabi from the start, but I remember that Iwagakur paid a lot of money to take it from them. Was this some kind of retribution? Omegakur intelligence, the years of the civil strife in the Omegakur is finally over, a ninja called Hanzo has become their leader. Hanzo Masahiko was lost in his thoughts, I didn't expect him to appear this early. Soon a new generation of shinobis will emerge, Hiruzen Sarutobi, Hanzo the Salamander, Onaki. Masahiko stood up and walked back to his desk after he finishes reviewing all the documents. He sat down then and watched his 3 elders busy reviewing their reports. It feels pretty good being a hokage. Chapter 103, Matchmaker. Okay, I will talk to the hokage. Nara Patriarch nodded again and again, bitterly. He turned around and walked into the hokage building to find Masahiko sitting on his seat with his leg up on the desk. Substitute hokage, this is already the 6th. That's okay, just get used to it, there will be more in the future. It's been just a month since Masahiko became the hokage, and he already received the 6th complaint just now. Damn it, there are people who dare to complain to the hokage? Something is wrong with these people. Masahiko said nothing, but deep inside, he started to feel irritated. Becoming a hokage is not really nice after all. Nara Patriarch sighed, and felt like he had no choice but to say it. Substitute hokage, you should at least treat the officials of the Land of Fire with a little more respect. Masahiko squinted his eyes, and then he sat up straight. Can you blame this on me? Only people who are having a death wish would want to visit the Land of Lightning in such situations. But, you should be at least polite. So, since I'm the hokage now, I should be the one who's licking their boots? The world is not peaceful now. In this war, we will most certainly be in need of the funds they will give us. Masahiko shook his head, you can't always depend on others. This is not good for Konoha's economic development. Economic development? Nara Patriarch looked puzzled. Just forget about it. Masahiko has some ideas, but he felt that they were all useless. Do I have to say that getting rich is dependent on how we raise our own crops? Masahiko smiled inside. Substitute hokage. Nara Patriarch looked at him helplessly, I really hope you. Okay, I understand already. Masahiko waved his hand, cutting his words short. But he secretly thought, keep nagging at me one more time, and I'm gonna knock off your front teeth. There's one more thing. The war compensation from Tsunagakur has already been sent. Should we mobilize the blacksmiths now? Masahiko smiled and nodded, yes, assemble it. But don't you think the Sungakur turned out to be so soft? It'll stretch it even more. Expect us to step up our research on the Ichibus Jinchuriki at this rate. Just a month ago, Masahiko sent an envoy to Tsunagakur. Of course, as a token of friendship and alliance, Tsunagakur needed to provide Konoha a large amount of several minerals. Although the Land of Wind is the largest country among the nations, it has the least natural resources. Otherwise, they will not ask Konoha and Kumagakur for trade and supplies. Masahiko sent his letter directly to the half-dead second hokage, which was left severely injured by Mito, mentioning that next time, he will ask her to aim for the head. However, it seemed that the second hokage is a tough guy, and after a while, he replied with another envoy and wrote down half of the resources, hoping to negotiate with Masahiko. Unexpectedly, when Masahiko saw that, he added another 50% to his original offer and sent it back. The hokage agreed almost immediately after that. Substitute hokage, do you really care about getting that information? Naruto Patriarch hesitated, then asked. Masahiko shook his head, not really. Not everyone is like Mito. He won't be able to perfectly control the Ichibus chakra. Is there anything else? Masahiko lay down again with his feet on the table. Naruto Patriarch paused for a moment, then remembered something. The students from the Ninja Academy are about to graduate. Oh, are there any geniuses? Well, there's a child who's only 7 years old, he applied for the graduation exam and is expected to pass. Replied Naruto Patriarch. Oh, a genius? What is his name? Masahiko still lying in his seat feeling lazy, he had 2 young boys who graduated at the age of 6 before, so it wasn't quite remarkable. He's a kid from the Heitake clan, and his name is Sakumo. Who? Masahiko quickly sat up straight. Heitake Sakumo, is there any problem? No, no problem, Masahiko replied, then he lay down again. How did I forget about him? Konoha's white fang. Masahiko whispered, is there anybody else that will appear in this era? By the way, Naruto Patriarch, is there a student called Mato Dai at the Ninja Academy? Mato Dai? I'm not sure. Masahiko frowned. Kakashi's father and Guy's father should be about the same age. Should I go to find him? Ah, forget it, gold always shines. Masahiko didn't say much, but Naruto seemed like he has realized on his own that he needs to pay attention to this Mato Dai. Grandpa Masahiko. A girl's voice came from outside, and suddenly Masahiko's face showed uneasiness. Yuna, you are skipping classes again. The girl's name is Uzumaki Yuna. She's 7 years old, and the daughter of Yuriko. After the death of Ashina, Masahiko provided her all the love he could give because he felt guilty about her father's death. And because of the kind of relationship he had with her mother, Masahiko told her to call him Grandpa. Shikariu smiled bitterly upon seeing her. Substitute hokage, I'll take my leave. Masahiko waved his hand to Naruto Patriarch, then watched Yuna walking to his side, and asked again, why did you skip school again? Yuna pouted, Grandpa Masahiko, I know everything they teach us in the school. But still, studying is important. Masahiko smiled while saying this. It was nostalgic because he felt the same way about the 3rd grade in his previous life. When he remembered that, he almost laughed out loud, then he said, forget it, if you don't want to go, then don't go. But why didn't you apply for the graduation exam this year? Yuna perfectly inherited Yuriko's talent. At the age of 7, she already at the level of a genin. Yuna shook her head, Grandpa Masahiko, can you teach me a few tricks of ninjutsu? My mother said that I was still young and she would not teach me. But there's an irritating white-haired boy in my class, which I couldn't win against him. I want to beat him, then I can graduate again next year. White hair. Masahiko paused for a moment, Heitake Sakumo? Yuna nodded, do you know him too? Naruto Patriarch just told me that he applied for graduation. What? Yuna shouted, that irritating white hair. I'm going to apply for graduation too. With that being said, Yuna quickly rushed out. Masahiko froze for a moment, then he shook his head bitterly, this girl is nothing like Yuriko when she was young. However, she seemed to have moved on from the loss of her father. Sure enough, I'm glad that I've asked Yuriko to send her to the Ninja Academy. Masahiko then scratched his head, I feel that Yuna will have a good friendship with Sakumo. Masahiko suddenly thought that it's a good idea to match the 2 kids. If Yuna and Sakumo ended up together, will they give birth to an enhanced Kakashi? Wait, what if it's not Kakashi? Masahiko hesitated. Don't worry about it, the plot has already deviated this much anyway, Kakashi sorry, bro. So, how do I make a good first impression for both of them? Or should it be more classic like the hero who saves the beauty? Masahiko scratched his head. Masahiko's traditional Uzumaki-style matchmaking is about to go down. Chapter 104, Tobirama's Return. Lord Substitute Hokage. Masahiko smiled contently and nodded in satisfaction as he walked into the newly built Konoha weaponry department. Looking at the already decent developed chakra diffusion cannon, Masahiko nodded with even more satisfaction. During this time, Masahiko was able to understand why the Land of Fire is regarded as the wealthiest country. The materials obtained from Tsunagakure were almost equal to the materials which the Gold and Silver brothers gathered for their Chakra Blast Cannon, and the materials that Konoha have now is 10 times the amount. With so many raw materials, Masahiko didn't have to provide any help. In just 1.5 months, a finished product was almost ready. "Grandpa, you are here." Seeing Masahiko, Kenji greeted Masahiko happily and said, "Our final product is almost finished according to the drawing you gave us." Kenji is now in charge of the newly established Konoha Weaponry Department and also entrusted with the position of Deputy Minister of Weapons by Masahiko. A key position such this one must be held by a trusted aide, of course. As for the minister itself, a lot of people want to sit in that position. But Masahiko kept the seat vacant for now. "Orochimaru, grow up quickly." Masahiko feels that this position is most suitable to be filled by Orochimaru. Maybe it will help him study some amazing forbidden techniques. Maybe the piece that Hashirama wanted doesn't need to be understood by the shinobi world. Maybe in the future, Orochimaru will be able to develop a Chakra Village missile, and it will help them finally love each other. Masahiko smiled, then looked at Kenji and asked, "If the finished product is almost ready? Then do you have any idea what we should do next?" Kenji froze. Grandpa, if the test result is good, then we will make batches later, probably around 10 pieces per batch." Masahiko shook his head and sighed. Apparently Kenji doesn't have a scientific mind. "You don't want to make any improvement to the cannon? Is there still a room for improvement for this weapon?" "Of course. For example, we can adjust the body size so it'll be easier to carry, or we can try to reduce the amount of the requirement chakram." Masahiko gave him 2 ideas. Kenji seemed surprised. "Oh, so any idea on how we can do that?" Masahiko felt helpless. If improvement was that easy, then he would have already improved it a long time ago. He doesn't really understand this kind of chakra technology. In the past 2 months, he has studied the drawings, hoping a scientific research skill will appear on his status bar, so he could add points there. But until now, there were no signs that it will appear. Maybe a unique condition is needed. Masahiko shook his head and said, "No, use your own head." He turned away, then he left the weapon department. On the way back to the hokage building, a lot of people greeted him. But Masahiko, like usual, didn't pay attention because he was lost in his thought. "Chakra technology, what if we switch it to electric technology?" Masahiko thought, "But how can I generate power here? Should we use ninjutsu?" Masahiko then shook his head, "I want to develop some forbidden technology for Konoha, but I actually don't know anything. If only was a scientist in my previous life, well, I can only hope that the skill will pop up by luck." "Huh?" Masahiko then suddenly felt a slight strange fluctuation in his chakra. He immediately bit his finger. "Kokiyos no Jutsu." A small slug appeared in front of him. Masahiko seemed surprised, saying, "Katsuya-sama, how did you heal him so quickly?" "He's not completely healed, but the situation is not crucial anymore, and he insisted on coming back." Masahiko scratched his head. He has been a hokage for only 2.5 months, and now he's about to get sacked. I thought I could at least be a hokage for a year, I didn't expect it to end so soon." Masahiko felt a little bit disappointed. "Did he left already?" Masahiko asked. "Yes. Judging by the distance from Shikotsu Forest to Konoha, he will reach Konoha approximately in the evening. Then I should go back and lie down on my hokage throne for the last time." Masahiko whispered and reversed summoned Katsuyu, then he went back to the hokage office to sleep. As a result, in less than an hour, Masahiko sensed a familiar chakra, which made him stand up, hurriedly. "What the hell, how did he come so fast?" Just thinking about that, a figure flashed in the hokage building. At the same time, 2 Umbu suddenly appeared in front of the person and then bowed down. "Lord Second." Tobirama waved his hand, and then the 2 Umbu left. Masahiko's face turned black. He got ignored entirely, they didn't even look at him. "How did you come here so fast? Did you use the flying Raijin?" Looking at Masahiko, Tobirama coughed twice. "Second Grandpa, I didn't know that I would be in a coma for more than 2 months. I was worried about Konoha, so I came back." Masahiko frowned. "You're still coughing, don't force yourself, man, your face looks like Gecko Hayate." I told Katsuya to explain the situation for you, did she forget? With me here, you don't need to worry. Tobirama looked puzzled for a moment, he clearly doesn't know who Gecko Hayate is. However, after so many years of getting along with Masahiko, Tobirama learned to ignore some of Masahiko's messy words. Katsuya told me, but still, I was anxious. There's nothing to worry about, Masahiko said that in a lower voice, apparently thinking why would Tobirama feel that way. He glared at Tobirama, this grandpa of yours is filling your vacant position temporarily, and you have nothing to worry about. During this whole time, I received less than 15 complaints. Suddenly, Tobirama twitched his mouth, Grandpa, I've been a hokage for 5 years, and I'm not even close to that number. Masahiko's face turned dark, hey, let me tell you something now, when you were off, these people became too naggy, they don't know how hard it is to maintain a village, they ask for a lot. And as expected, Nara Patriarch is the snitch, oh, I'm so gonna fire his butt. Tobirama sighed for a moment, there is really nothing to say. Masahiko got up, okay, then you can have your throne back. I've just had enough of it anyway. I will pack up my things and go back to the Uzumaki clan. This second grandpa will not play with you anymore. Tobirama hesitated for a moment, then asked, second grandpa, the thing with the Uzumaki? Masahiko waved his hand, it's okay, maybe it's because I tried to force them to be entirely tied to Konoha, I was too naive. The population of the clan is too high. And the numbers of the Uzumaki Shinobi alone already half of Konoha's. It will cause problems for both sides, sooner or later. Masahiko then sighed for a long time, I will return and build my own country. Masahiko nodded, then walked to the door and said with a smile, Tobirama, last time in Kumagakure, this grandpa was stupid and almost killed you. You haven't recovered yet, don't forget to take care of your body. For now, no one will dare to provoke our Konoha, rest assured. And Masahiko hesitated, Konoha now has a big advantage over the other villages. Thus, I've decided that I will not participate in the next war. After saying this, Masahiko shook his head, then walked out of the hokage building. The feeling of guilt still lingered his heart, especially for Yuriko's husband. Walking on the familiar streets of Konoha, Masahiko gazed around. Go back to the Buildusa Shiagakure. Next time I come here again, Konoha might not be the same. I wonder how much the story has changed. Masahiko then roamed in the street of Konoha with endless sadness in his heart. Chapter 105, Country of the Whirlpools. The familiar scenery appeared again in front of Masahiko. After 7 years, Masahiko finally returned to the Uzumaki clan. Behind him were the Uzumaki clansmen who resided in Konoha. With this, the Uzumaki officially withdrew from Konoha. Well, it's not entirely true, because there were still 2 Uzumaki clan members in Konoha, which are Mito and one of Masahiko's disciples, Kanikiro. I said gold always shine, but maybe shit is just too smelly. Masahiko shook his head bitterly. Masahiko didn't notice it, but it seems that Kanikiro somehow found Mito die a while ago, and the two smelled together right away, which made Kanikiro unwilling to move out of Konoha and leave his disciple. It's a good thing that he stayed there. At least I won't miss any important news from Konoha. Masahiko didn't want to go back to Konoha for the time being. Still, he didn't miss out on any news. Grandpa Masahiko, didn't you say that mother is coming to pick us up? Yuna asked. Masahiko also had doubts, he couldn't sense Yuriko's chakra anywhere near. While holding Yuna's hand, Masahiko answered, I thought so, maybe there's something that delayed her on the way, regardless of that, let's go back first. Masahiko then waved his hand, and the people behind him followed. As he got closer to Uzumaki clan's land, Masahiko started to feel more and more uneasy. Yuna, it might be because I didn't come back for a long time, but when did the vicinities of the clan ever look like this? Yuna was also puzzled, Grandpa Masahiko, it didn't look like this before. Masahiko felt shocked, and immediately looked at the other clansmen behind, but they also seemed clueless. Although these people are stationed in Konoha, some of them always travel between the 2 villages, and after hearing Yuna's answer, I can't help but feel that something is wrong. What the hell did Gensuke do? Masahiko then fastened his pace. When he arrives at the village, Masahiko's expression was even more dazed. A palace-like structure has risen in the middle of the village, and the environment was completely different from what he knew. Some people from the clan finally noticed them and came to greet them. Great Elder, and elders. One of them greeted. Masahiko nodded and left the others to settle down. Yuna, come with me. I found your mother's chakra. Masahiko sensed Yuriko's chakra coming from that palace. The moment the two entered the palace, Masahiko heard a quarrel inside. Gensuke. Sensei's house can't be taken down. Yuriko, I already built a better house for the Great Elder, and he even has a room inside the palace. His old house has been ruined. No. It can't be relocated. Maybe Sensei likes that old house. As he listened, Masahiko gradually understood what was going on. Masahiko then walked through the hall to the inner room. The two people who were in an argument then turned around, while beside them Nanako sighed helplessly. Mother! Yuna shouted, then she ran to Yuriko and quickly hugged her. A Great Elder! Gensuke hesitated, why you're already back? Masahiko glanced at him, yes, but I'm afraid that I don't have a place here to call home. Nanako looked embarrassed, Sensei, Gensuke didn't mean that. It's just that your old house is damaged badly. It can't even be repaired. Masahiko was shocked, my house. Masahiko spent most of his life in the clan when he was less than 20 years old, his parents died, and his elder brother, who became the patriarch, built that house for him. 60 years have passed, and that's a long period for a home to survive. I don't want to talk about my house. But tell me first, Gensuke, what are you going to do with such a big palace? Gensuke was surprised for a moment, then he looked puzzled, didn't you say that you want to build a country? Doesn't a country need a palace? Masahiko sighed helplessly, I went to the land of fire more than 20 years ago, there was, of course, a palace for the daimyo, but it was about the size of your current palace. We're not as strong financially as they were back then, nor do we have a bigger land than them, don't you feel this is a bit ridiculous? Gensuke felt speechless and had nothing to say back. Gensuke, do you see? Sensei doesn't agree on building such a big palace too. Yuriko next to him said. Nanako sighed helplessly. Her little sister is always arguing with Gensuke recently, but she's trying not to meddle in. Masahiko could sense that too, thus, he decided to move on with a smile. Gensuke, can the name of our country be the Land of Whirlpools? Gensuke was stunned for a moment, Great Elder, you want our country to be called the Land of Whirlpool? It's a good idea, I will do it. Masahiko nodded, you will become the daimyo. It will be your responsibility to take care of the country's affairs. But you can't also be the Uzumaki clan patriarch. Gensuke's expression changed, Great Elder, but I have Nanako to help me manage. Masahiko smiled and shook his head, let Yuriko be the patriarch, and you and your wife will take care of the country. Okay, Sensei, Yuriko said, but Gensuke hasn't said anything yet. Upon seeing that, he sighed and didn't object it. Masahiko nodded. Even if it was under his supervision, he wasn't sure about handling such power to Gensuke, but with Yuriko there, he felt that there will be fewer things for him to worry about. Okay then, continue your work. Build our own country, I won't meddle in your work. Oh, don't expect me to stay in that room. Masahiko waved his hand and went out. Great Elder. I was also preparing a new house for you. It's not that far, the old patriarch also lives there. Let me take you there. My nephew, forget it. I will see my old house first. Masahiko took a few turns, then finally came to his familiar house. The cracks were all around the house, which made Masahiko frown slightly. I really can't live here anymore. Doton heavenly clay. Masahiko performed a series of hand signs, and then clays fell from the sky, that he used to cover the damager parts of the house. Masahiko still frowned, it's too ugly. Is there any ninjutsu that I can use to build a beautiful house? It turns out that it's not possible yet. Ah, forget it. Doton erupt. Masahiko raised his house from the ground and then sealed it with a sealing scroll. I will keep it like this for now. As for a place where I can stay, Masahiko frowned. He didn't really want to go to the new house because he felt that he needs to be ready for the troubles that will come looking for them. The countries begin to learn about the importance of the Jinchuriki, I'm afraid they won't be afraid to attack the Uzumaki clan. Well, I'm also not afraid of them. As long as I'm here, they won't defeat us, but I don't think that I would be able to live with myself if anyone else died under my watch. Masahiko murmured, Kumagakure is in the north, and Kirigakure in the east, but we're separated by the sea. So it would be better if I stayed on the northeast side of the country. Fortunately, our land is not that big. I will stay near the sea, and wait for the after effect of the Hachiman to be gone. Then I can start practice a little more, and there are also 300 witness points ready to be spent. Masahiko wanted to get stronger to prevent things from his previous battle to ever happen again. Time passed quickly, and in the 14th year since the establishment of Konoha, the country of the whirlpools was officially established. Masahiko watched Gensuke announcing the official establishment of the country excitedly, but he on the other hand was disappointed. So, once you obtain witness points from an event, no matter what you do, you won't be rewarded again? The establishment of the whirlpool country didn't grant him any more witness points, proving that it's not feasible to repeatedly gain witness points from one event. Forget it. Take me back, I don't want this anymore. Chapter 106, The Power of Cells. As soon as the land of whirlpools was established, a grand ceremony was held. The mask festival was still a popular thing among the clansmen, and of course, that old mask with Masahiko's face was still there. Both the shinobi and the civilians were immersed in joy and peace. Masahiko walked on the streets of the new country, and there was an emotion stirring in his heart. The Uzumaki can be more prosperous than Konoha. Then how could such a powerful clan like the Uzumaki get destroyed in the original story? Masahiko remembers that during the Second Shinobi World War period, the Uzumaki clan was already destroyed, and only a few people survived. Who attacked them in the Second War? Masahiko whispered, he only remembers that most of the time, Konoha was fighting on the Omegakure's lands. Hey, who cares, with me, Yuriko, and Nanako, Uzumaki won't be destroyed, but if that happens, then the Edo Tensei will always be the answer. We just need to change the name of the country to the Land of Deadpools. At the same time, deep underground inside a cave at the mountain's graveyard. It has been more than 5 years since the Battle of the Valley of the End, and Uchiha Madara, who awakened the Rinnegan, finally mastered the yin-yang release with Zetsu's help. Madara looked deeply at Zetsu with his Rinnegan. What kind of creature are you? The yin-yang release is not something that a so-called manifestation of my will can master. Who I am is not important, replied Zetsu, who has decided at that point to give up on the idea of convincing Madara that he was a manifestation of his will. What important is that need my help now, and I will need your help in the future. My help? Madara raised his brow, looking at the vast Gadumazo behind him. With this thing, my movement is completely restricted. This ability of the 6 paths, can you untie it? Zetsu shook his head, the Rinnegan is more than this ability. Madara felt stunned for a moment, then quickly replied, Rinnegan? Zetsu nodded, yes, as long as you find someone who can carry your Rinnegan eyes after you die, you get reincarnated. Immersed by Zetsu's answer, Madara fell into deep thought. This guy knows too much, but he still needs my help. And let me guess, there aren't a lot of people who can bear the power of these eyes and use that technique, right? Zetsu nodded, yes, there aren't a lot of people like this. But they're easy to find. Shinobi from the Uzumaki or the Senju will be fine due to their strong chakra. But to utilize this kind of technique, it's not easy. Senju, Uzumaki. A small Masahiko suddenly appeared in Madara's thoughts. In fact, I found the most suitable person, Zetsu continued. Madara kept quiet, and Zetsu continued his explanation. Uzumaki Masahiko should be able to use this technique. That old man? He isn't dead yet? And are you sure that you're able to control him to use this ninjutsu? Madara's expression was solemn. Zetsu shook his head, he is not dead. That guy has a long lifespan. However, he started to look older a year ago, but I feel he will live longer than you. Madara took a deep breath, that damned old man. Is there a way to make him use that technique to reincarnate me? Zetsu shook his head, there may have been a way if you had a better relationship with him. Madara's face went dark, then he extended his right hand, Shinra Tensei. Zetsu was sent flying by the Shinra Tensei and hit the wall. Then without saying any more, he merged into the wall. Zetsu teleported quickly toward the east while shaking his head. I'm not kidding. Uzumaki Masahiko seems like he can't die. Even if he used the Gadu art of Rein Rebirth to revive Madara, he might not die. This man is very strange. Zetsu then teleported all the way through a wall and appeared in a secret underground base. Inside the room, there are 2 rows of white zetsu sleeping, 8 in each row, making the total 16. One row was injected with Hashirama's cell, while the other was injected by Masahiko's cell. Black zetsu then awakened these 16 white zetsu. And under his control he made the first and second row zetsu fight each other one-on-one. 7 of the results were expected. The white zetsu injected with Hashirama's cell beat the Masahiko injected white zetsu and almost killed them. But in the last pair, Masahiko's cell carrier won. Black zetsu then commanded the 7 white zetsu to attack the remaining one with Masahiko's cell, but in an instant, they got slain by him. Sure enough, what I felt was right. It seems that this white zetsu suddenly became very strong nearly a year ago. But why? The secret of Uzumaki Masahiko should be hidden behind the answer. Black zetsu then thought about it for a moment. A year ago, I've sent this white zetsu to collect some intelligence in the land of hot water. He should have witnessed Masahiko's battle there. Did this white zetsu got stronger just by watching the main body fighting? Or is there some other restrictions? If there are no other restrictions, then this guy's cells are too strong. I would like to test this theory. But it's a pity that Masahiko's cell is difficult to obtain. He has strong perception ability, and rarely fights with other people. Even during his battle in the land of hot water, he didn't shed a drop of blood. The only sample I managed to get was when he fought Madara 14 years ago. With every test, Black Zetsu was getting more and more pleasantly surprised. Both the strength and agility are much stronger than before. The effect is almost 10 times that of Hashirama's cell. It seems that the secret behind Uzumaki Masahiko is not that small. After all, this must be tested more. After a pause, Black Zetsu whispered, if he can be enhanced without any restrictions, then I'm afraid that this can become the biggest help for unsealing Mother. Madara might become unreliability. Black Zetsu then extracted Masahiko and Hashirama's cells from the white Zetsu's corpses and sank into the ground. Deep underground, the room became very quiet. After Black Zetsu left the room, Masahiko's white Zetsu suddenly showed strange, sad expression, then murmured, Kaguya. At this time, in the land of Whirlpool, the sky gradually dimmed, and the lively festival was finally over. After that, except for some civilians who were cleaning, no one could be found on the street. Masahiko also returned to his new home. It was a beach cottage. As for the cold sea breeze, it doesn't really bother Masahiko. After such a long time, the side effect of the Hachiman is finally gone. The land of whirlpools has also been successfully established. Next is practicing. My mind's eye of the Kagura will always be activated. If Kumigakure or Kirigakure shinobi ever approached the village, I will intercept as long as they are not too far from my location. Masahiko then glanced at the remaining witness points, frowning slightly. This time, rescuing Tobirama has caused a lot of changes in the back plot. From now on, there will be lesser ways to obtain witness points. It's better to improve with training first. I only need to use my witness points at critical moments. It's estimated that I will only reach the SSS level when all the 7 attributes are at LV9. Only then, I will be considered as a strong player in the 4th war. However, how can a gap of witness points close to 2,800 be filled up? Chapter 107, Mortal Limit. Time passed by quickly. It has been 10 years since Masahiko started living in seclusion. On the seaside, Masahiko's expression seemed dignified as he was searching his chakra. Chibaku Tensei. The ground trembled, and the surrounding rock and debris floated and gathered in the sky, forming an orb with a diameter of 5 meters. Release! Masahiko gasped, then the rock sphere fell on the ground. Masahiko shook his head with a wary smile, this cannot be called a star. I won't be able to trap a single person with this, not to mention a Baijuyu. He called it Chibaku Tensei. However, Masahiko didn't awaken a Rinnegan or anything. It is actually just a combination between his L8 Earth release and his LV8 Thunder release. When it is combined with gravity and magnetic manipulation, Masahiko then can emit an attractive force for a short time. Masahiko's ability to imitate the Rinnegan technique, the Chibaku Tensei, Banshotenin, can be regarded extraordinary, but also incomparable. The enemies must be within the radius of 20 meters so the force effect can be applied on him. Apart from the enormous amount of chakra consumption, there's no side effect, as long as he doesn't maintain it longer than 5 seconds. However, reaching the power of the actual Chibaku Tensei is kind of impossible. The power of these two techniques are far from being close. Cat on Fireball. Masahiko gasped a few times, then once again used some hand signs, and released one of the most basic ninjutsu. Although it was only a fireball technique, the scope was almost the same as that of Madara. The sea in front of Masahiko was boiling and evaporating. This was the combination of the LV8 fire wind releases of Masahiko, which significantly improved the effectiveness of the technique and the fireball kept on going forward a few hundred meters on the sea, then suddenly rose up to the sky and exploded. This was another combination. Masahiko used the wind release to steer the fireball, and change its course. Although he can only change its trajectory only one time, it can turn the tides of battle if used right. Water is useless, but the combination of the 8 LV water and thunder release creates storm release. Masahiko sighed. As for the LV8 water release, it seems to be the most useless one for Masahiko. It allows Masahiko to dive underwater at high speed, which is no different from the earth release. Top 10 celebrities who turned fame into fortune. Top 10 celebrities who turned fame into fortune. Sponsored results. What's the use of this ability? Catch fishes? Masahiko muttered, however, it's been 2 years since I've leveled up my 7th attribute to LV8, and since then, there wasn't much to develop. In the past 10 years, Masahiko endured 8 of them and didn't use any witness points. Before he finally ended up using 50. Mostly it's because of Masahiko's age. The age of 60 years and above is not suitable for developing ninjutsu. And he really needed to make some progress. Masahiko couldn't help but reduce his age directly, but God knows when he will ever have the opportunity to get some witness points again. These 50 points are a waste of money. The entire event of the Valley of the End granted me only 50 points. Why do I have to waste it on time, when all that I got in is time? Masahiko then looked at his status windows. Name, Uzumaki Masahiko. Age, 56, Chakra, 3000, plus, Physique, 986, plus, Technique, 8000, plus 10, Convertible etc. Dust Release, LV8, 3 million, plus, Water Release, LV8, 1 million, Fusible, plus, Thunder Release, LV8, 1 million, Fusible, plus, Fuinjutsu, LV8, 1 million, plus, Yang Attribute, can be merged with Yin, LV8, 1 million, plus, Yin Attribute, can be merged with Yang, LV8, 1 million, plus, Special Skills, Rank, SS Witness Points, 150. Only 150 points are left? Masahiko sighed, feeling that these points will not be enough. 2 years passed since Masahiko maxed out all of his attributes to LV8. Leveling all of them to LV8 didn't give Masahiko a new fusion combined between the 4th or the 5th basic releases, but only significantly enhancement in his ninjutsu control. For example, before he could only make himself fly, but now he can levitate things or objects as long as it's within 20 meters radius from him. However, something seems wrong. Masahiko shook his head, feeling helpless. Since then, Masahiko used his attributes a lot and practiced all the time, but these 5 attributes didn't improve at all. Masahiko always thought that as long as he's talented enough and his lifespan is long enough, he can reach the highest level by training. However, in the past 2 years, Masahiko discovered that limits exist. For example, Masahiko's body has a limit in its 5 attributes of LV8. It might be because he's an Uzumaki, an average shinobi usually can't handle that many elements. Is this the limit of the mortal? Masahiko smiled bitterly. If there are no witness points, I'm afraid that even if I lived forever, I wouldn't be able to break these limits. It will always be this level. No, maybe. Masahiko suddenly remembered Orochimaru's various human transformation in the original story, the bloodline limit transplantation, and Hashirama's cells. I may become a freak, but it may be able to break the limits of the human body. Fortunately, I don't have to use such despicable methods. Masahiko whispered and felt a little bit lucky. It's a pity that I didn't get any witness points earlier. If I had reached this level in my 20 or 30, then I would still have time. Forget it, all of my 5 attributes are at LV8, and my rank has finally reached SS. And if I'm guessing right, the human body limit can be broken. When my Yang attribute reaches LV9, I think I will be able to get a Sage mode similar to Hashirama. So what important now is, how do I find another 250 witness points? 400 points? While thinking about it, suddenly, a row of words appeared before him. witness and small participation in a dramatic change of the main storyline of Naruto World, the First Shinobi War, witness points obtained, plus 50, 8, *8. Wow, this is a new thing, I guess? Masahiko's face became stiff for a moment, then he smiled. Well, I only participated in the beginning, so I think it's divided by 8 due to that reason. But I also saved Tobirama, which changed the war process dramatically, so I think that's from where the 8 multiplications come from. So, in the end, it's still 50. And the First Shinobi World War is finally over. Over the years, Masahiko lost track of the news from the outside world. After saving Tobirama, the rest of the First War was a bit different. Mito's intervention in the war made Tsunagakure stop its aggression toward Konoha. But in the 14th year since the establishment of Konoha, Tobirama took the initiative to attack Kumagakure. If they didn't release the Nibi and the Hashibai at that moment and defend with their lives at stake, Konoha would have wiped their entire village from the map, and the 5 major villages would have become 4. Even so, Kumagakure finally paid the war reparation to Konoha. And in the words of Masahiko, their economy went 20 years backward. At that point, it was only 16 years since the establishment of Konoha. Masahiko thought that this was the end of it, and things should calm down now. After all, Kirigakure and Iwagakure gradually subsided after their 2 Kage killed each other. Masahiko was still angry for forgetting to find Mew. However, the thing that Masahiko didn't expect is the last rebellion launched by the small villages. Amegakure wanted to take Kumagakure position as one of the great shinobi villages, while Takigakure and Kusagakure wanted to replace Iwagakure's seat. Well, obviously, they failed Masahiko's side. Well, Amegakure didn't lose much. After all, Kumagakure got hit so badly by Konoha. However, Takigakure village got almost wiped out by Onaki, who has finally learned his dust release. The wars continued one after another, and it was not until now that it completely ceased. The 5 major villages remained the same, except that Konoha is now significantly stronger than the original. The story didn't change much. However, what troubling me are the few changes inside the village. I don't know where the story is going anymore. Masahiko let out a sigh and was lost inside his thoughts, forgetting that he needed to find a way to get more witness points. Chapter 108, The Deadly Recoil. I wanted to save Tobirama, but it's not my fault that I also ended up meddling with Kagami's fate. Masahiko shook his head bitterly. 10 years ago, Masahiko unintentionally saved Uchiha Kagami when he tried to suicide by jumping from a cliff. And 2 years ago, Kagami managed to become the Uchiha clan patriarch. Under his rule, the Uchiha has become somewhat different. This way, I think the Uchiha won't be eradicated. Well, even though this is a good thing, but what about my witness points? Masahiko initially planned to save the Uchiha clan in the future, thus changing the history once again and get a lot of witness points. And there's one more problem Masahiko sighed. Because Mito intervened in the battle against Tsunagakure, and because Tobirama didn't die, Konoha took a significant advantage, and almost had no adversity. Thus, 2 more people who should have been killed in the First Shinobi World War survived. Of course, I don't want them to die. But, this will make things even more difficult for me. The 2 people that should have died is none other than Orochimaru parents. Without their death, Orochimaru will never embark on the path of studying eternal life, which will make Konoha less fun for Masahiko. No, I have to think of another way. Masahiko sighed. He still has a lot of things that he would like Orochimaru to help achieve them in the future. Fortunately, even though there are a lot of changes, the important characters are still being born one by one. In the 5th year of Konoha, Kagami's nephew was born, and his name was Fugaku. In the 90th year of Konoha, the Hyuga twins, Hisashi and Hayashi, were born. In the 20th year of Konoha, Uchiha Mikoto was born. And in the 23rd year of Konoha, Inoichi Yamanaka, Shikaku Nara and Choza Akimichi were born. This way, the main plot is not completely ruined. It's estimated that some events will still happen. Masahiko could only comfort himself. While Masahiko was thinking, suddenly, he feels a familiar chakra approaching, and it made him feel even more helpless. Grandpa Masahiko! I made it! This girl was the 17 years old Yuna, who has perfectly inherited Yuriko's talent. Now she's a Masahiko didn't know why, but when she was 10 years old, she saw the chakra diffusion cannon. And from that time she's been out of control, indulged in scientific researches. Next to her is a black-haired boy, about 10 years old. When he saw Masahiko, he shouted, "Grandpa!" This boy was the second son of Hashirama, his name is Senja Masahiko. Compared with Kenji, who seemingly inherited Mito's character, Masahiko is more like Hashirama and even inherited his insane physical strength. My yang release is LV8 for years now, and I still cannot be compared to his father. Now Masahiko's yang release is estimated to be level 5 or 6. When he's fully mature, he will surely reach my level, and maybe even develop his own sage mode. Yuna, did you go to Konoha a while ago? Yuna sighed helplessly, yes, Grandpa, but Masahiko came back with me. Mayurama was smiling. Masahiko didn't really know for sure, but since the first time Masahiko saw Yuna at the age of 5 or 6, he has become very clingy to her. Love at first sight? More like lack of maternal love? Masahiko chuckled. He always felt that Mito can only give Masahiko a grandma-like love. Hey, did you go to Konoha to see Sakumo? Masahiko chuckled. Yuna's face turned bright red, Grandpa. If you say that one more time again I will get angry. I just went to Konoha to see the weapons department for inspiration. Then I quickly returned to make a new weapon. Oh? A new weapon? Masahiko was surprised, are there any finished products? Masahiko has been following the scientific researches of the Konoha weapons department. Over the years, they managed to increase the firing power but didn't bother studying how to reduce consumption. Masahiko heard that the last model has 9-tail firing power. But when they tested it, the cannon could only fire 2 full shots, then the chakra reserve was completely drained. On the Uzumaki side, there was a little improvement from time to time, related to Masahiko's suggestions, but the progress was still too low. Yuna smiled and took out a scroll from her pocket. After unsealing it, Masahiko's expression became strange. Masahiko frowned, then picked it up, he weighed it, but it wasn't too heavy. But this shape, is this a cannon? It's more like a gun. Masahiko touched it and investigated it. Then he found a point where he can transfer his chakra. He faced the sea and fired it. Grandpa! Yuna shouted. The blast threw Masahiko back a few meters, and within a few seconds, Masahiko found himself sitting on the ground. After brushing off some dust on his shoulder, Masahiko stood up with a wry smile. On the side, Yuna felt guilty, Masahiko has really hit the ground hard, what is this? The power is okay, the lethality of this thing is on par with my raise non. And the consumption of the chakra is not that much, it also has a long range, but what's up with this recoil, you almost killed this old man. I haven't finished it yet, but isn't it very useful? Is it good? But it made you fall, which proves how powerful it is. Masahiko sighed, I fall, why don't you dare and try it yourself? But I won't try it again, go and ask your uncle Kanikiro, he's one of the people who won't mind getting bombarded. Grandpa, I will grow up strong, so I can use my sister Yuna's weapon in the future. Masahiko on the side said. Masahiko felt speechless, this kid, he's really into Yuna. How did Hashirama's second son ended up in Siskin relationship? Naruto's world doesn't need more of this, we already have Brockon. However, it's really impressive that Yuna can make something like, she really has a gift for science. At that moment, Masahiko seriously started considering matching her with Orochimaru. Forget it. While thinking of this, Masahiko suddenly sensed several chakras approaching quickly. Tsunade and Noeke? And the others tow with her. Masahiko has some speculation, which made him feel a little bit excited. Sure enough, when they got, Masahiko saw for the first time little Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Great Grandpa, I'm here. Last time you said you want to meet my 2 teammates, right? I brought them here. Masahiko nodded. Big Grandpa. I'm here too. Noeke ran over to say hello to Masahiko. Before he could even reply, Noeke saw Yuna and ran over toward her. Masahiko couldn't really know why Yuna was so popular around the children, especially those from the Senju clan. Back to his senses, Masahiko looked at Tsunade and young Jiraiya and Orochimaru in front of him. Despite his pale complexion, 14 years old Orochimaru looked handsome. Facing Masahiko, he politely greeted him, saying, hello. Jiraiya had the most powerful form, he looked like an adult. Orochimaru, why do you have to be polite to him, it's not like he's the hokage or some hotshot anyway. Why would anyone come to see his grand-grand-great-aunt grandpa? And yet here I'm in this ghost-hunted place. Now that we've seen it, let's go back already," said Jiraiya. Masahiko's face became black. He felt really irritated, as he muttered, "This damn brat." The first step in the training of these three legendary Sunin will start with politeness and respect. Chapter 109, Young Boy Want to Live Forever. Help! Tsunade, Orochimaru. Jiraiya was falling toward the ground at high speed. Just before he hit the ground, Nato clapped his hands and stopped the fall less than 10 centimeters above the ground. After a while, Jiraiya opened his eyes slowly, which were closed tightly, to find out that he was still floating. Jiraiya felt relieved for a moment, but when he saw how everyone was giggling, he suddenly became angry. He turned to Masahiko, and gritted his teeth, then said, "Old geezer! What kind of demonic trick did you use? Do you dare to mess with me, old man? I will fight you." He said that, then he rushed again toward Masahiko. Masahiko smiled, then he moved his hand again, and Jiraiya, who was running a moment ago, found himself running up to the sky. "Humph, you think I would be afraid of heights?" Masahiko turned to Tsunade with an evil smile, "Hey, do you mind having one less teammate?" "It doesn't matter, he's an idiot." While floating, Jiraiya's face turned green as his hands secretly trying to perform a hand sign. But Masahiko blinked and released his control over the levitating force. This time Jiraiya really fell on the ground, making a quite loud noise. Upon seeing this, Orochimaru's pupils shrunk, and he clenched his fists, but he released them after a moment. Masahiko smiled secretly, they were really such good friends before. "Great-grandpa, are you really trying to kill that idiot?" Tsunade next to him felt speechless. Masahiko smiled and shook his head with a smile, but suddenly Jiraiya appeared behind him, preparing to attack Masahiko. Tsunade was surprised. She quickly looked at the place where Jiraiya fell before and saw a wooden pile there. Substitution technique? Masahiko shook his head, not just a substitution technique. Masahiko's feet elevated off the ground and floated to the sky. Looking under him, a pair of hands suddenly appeared. Oh! He used Shadow Clone and the Groundhog technique decapitation at the same time. Not a bad idea, but unfortunately as soon as he saw that, Masahiko waved his hand, and a large piece of land under him trembled then floated off the ground with Jiraiya and his clone trapped in it. "You can actually do that?" Next to him, Orochimaru looked surprised. Just seeing Masahiko floating was already weird. He thought it was some kind of special ninjutsu because he didn't use any hand signs, but to do that and elevate a piece of land from the ground is just insane. "Of course, great-grandpa is very strong," said Tsunade proudly, "he's even stronger than my grandpa." Masahiko heard it, and couldn't help but cry, "If what you mean is gambling, then yeah maybe. And stop saying these nice things to make me teach you gambling because I want." In the air, the piece of rock gradually cracking and crumbling, revealing the prisoners inside. "So, which one of you is the real one?" Masahiko smirked, then moved the two pieces in the ground quickly, making the two facing each other mouth to mouth. Frightened by this torture, one of them disappeared. "So, did you thought about the most appropriate way to address me?" Masahiko smiled and looked at Jiraiya, who was still trapped inside the rocks. "Humph!" Jiraiya snorted and turned his face away, the great little Sunin refused to give up. Masahiko sighed, then flung him towards the ground. "Ancestral grandfather!" Jiraiya finally yielded, hearing that Masahiko stopped the fall, but what did he just say? Jiraiya felt relieved landing on the ground safely, but out of the blue, Tsunade appeared, landed a blow at him, and sent him flying away. "How dare you say that?" Masahiko shook his head with a wry smile, he didn't expect Tsunade to have such strength, she was still 14 years old, this is really amazing. Masahiko felt that the strength she has just used to blow Jiraiya away is not enough to make him worried. But poor Jiraiya in the distance was limping back toward them. He's not injured. This is probably another unsolved mystery of Naruto World. "Tsunade! Why are you hitting me too? Idiot!" Orochimaru said softly. "Orochimaru, what did you just say?" Seeing how Jiraiya and Orochimaru were about to have an argument, Tsunade quickly shouted, "Jiraiya, you idiot, he is my grandfather's grandpa." "Your grandpa's grandpa?" Jiraiya seemed puzzled, then he looked at Masahiko again, "Great-grand-grandpa?" Masahiko couldn't help but feel like he wanted to cry and laugh at the same time. Orochimaru, on the side, shrugged, then he said, I really don't know how this idiot managed to graduate from the Ninja Academy. He is the grandfather of her great-grandfather. Her grandfather's great-great-grandfather? The more he looked at Masahiko, the more Jiraiya's jaw was dropping. Are you sure he's not just the ancestral of all grandfather? This time Jiraiya really hit one of Masahiko's nerves, and he immediately rose to heaven. After 10 minutes, Jiraiya finally fell on the ground, his eyes were full of little stars. Masahiko made him experience one of the craziest roller coasters that no one ever in the world of Naruto has tried before. After he finally felt satisfied, Masahiko turned to Tsunade, why did you come here this time? Tsunade shook her head, it was sensei who brought us here. It was because we just finished the task of escorting a caravan to the land of whirlpools, or else I couldn't bring Nawaki. Eh? Why did Nawaki want to come here? Masahiko immediately shook his head, thinking about Yuna and her little triangle. Don't worry, he's with Yuna, and there are also 2 Umbu watching over them. Umbu? Masahiko was shocked that Tsunade didn't know. Tobirama is abusing his power for personal reasons, I see. I shouldn't be so happy and pleased, but to be honest, I am. Oh right, great-grandpa, sensei also has a message for you, it's from second grandpa, Tobirama. Huh? Tobirama is looking for me? This is really interesting. He didn't look for me during the war, but instead, after the war was over, he wants to see me, maybe he wants to share some of the war's loot. Let's go, we're leaving. That idiot is not back yet. He's okay. He recovered earlier and stayed there, listening to us talking. Wait, do you like him? Masahiko put a wicked smile. Tsunade glared at him and subconsciously wanted to punch Masahiko, but later she remembered that he was her grandpa. She pouted, then turned around, walking away while stomping the ground. Tsunade, wait for me. Jiraiya quickly climbed up and chased her. Orochimaru fell behind. Masahiko turned at Orochimaru and asked, you seemed very interested in the ninjutsu I've just used earlier. Yes. Orochimaru replied with a hoarse tone. That was a top-tier combination technique between Doton and Raiden. Orochimaru seemed fascinated by Masahiko's words, however, there's a limit within our body. No one other than me can fuse the earth and thunder releases to this point. If you want to break the limits of the human body, then you must start from the cells. Do you know about cells? Yes, the Ninja Academy taught us about this subject. Masahiko was surprised, the Ninja Academy teaches this? It must have been added by Tobirama. Young boy, do you seek eternal life? Orochimaru paused, then revealed his iconic tongue-licking movement. Elder, can you give me a few drops of your blood? Don't you even think about it, boy. Masahiko's face turned dark and refused this request decisively. Chapter 110, Uzumaki Kushina. The 4 people walked all the way to Uzushiagakure. This was a ninja hidden village built by the Uzumaki clan. Masahiko remembers that in the original story, this village is called the Village Hidden in Whirlpools or Uzushiagakure, but he thought that the name was too mouthful, so he suggested to change it to just Uzumaki Village. Compared to Konoha, this one was smaller and less prosperous. The size is only 1/5 of Konoha because the civilians didn't live here. This village is entirely occupied by shinobi, it's more like ninja's station. Moreover, the shinobi didn't take any missions from outside of the land of whirlpools. All of the tasks are from within the country. Although not too prosperous, over the years, the village has become stable and self-sufficient. In the past 10 years, Masahiko came here a few times, most of his times were spent on his beach house. Because he needed to keep watch in case Kumigakure or Kirigakure attacked them. However, Kumigakure obviously doesn't have the power to do that now, while the Kirigakure has sent 2 groups of shinobi to infiltrate the village before. And Masahiko made sure to make them disappear silently. Since then, they didn't have any more visitors, maybe they already abandoned this plan. Although this is not the first time I visit the village, the view is so spectacular that it makes me feel like I really want to live here, great-grandpa. On the side, Tsunade exclaimed. What's so good about it? There's nothing noteworthy here. Jiraiya started his chant again, but his voice was so faint as if he was whispering. Masahiko felt the same about the village, he finds it beautiful, and he dreams of buying a nice house someday and live inside this village. But right before he could realize that dream, Masahiko wanted to travel in Naruto World. He hadn't thought about that before, because he was broke in his past life, and didn't have much in this one, but the establishment of Land of Whirlpools made him remember one of his old wishes to design a beautiful villa. Although he can't have any modern decoration, it will look nice with antique style too. Great-grandpa? Seeing how Masahiko didn't answer her, Tsunade wondered. Ah, of course, it is spectacular, I personally designed it. Masahiko was proud. Masahiko then went silent to think about one more serious issue. Those theories actually turned out to be wrong. I really thought, like everyone, that the reason Orochimaru drowned himself to study science and immortality is that he lost his parents. But it seems not to be the case. His character already threaded to that road anyway. I tried to hook him up into it and ended up getting myself into trouble. Masahiko doesn't believe that Orochimaru's research on his cells will reveal anything because all of his power comes from the system. Still, it's a bit awkward after all. With my current strength, there's almost no one who can pose a threat to me for now. It shouldn't be a problem. Masahiko believed that, but he felt like he should be more careful. Aunt Yuriko! Aunt Nanako! Tsunade's exclaim suddenly woke up Masahiko. Nanako, why are you here? After the establishment of the Land of Whirlpools, Nanako lived in the palace with Gensuke and became the nation's first lady. Sensei, I was going to look for you with Yuriko. Nanako smiled happily at Masahiko. What's the matter? Why are you so happy? My granddaughter was born. Masahiko froze for a moment, then looked closely at Nanako. Is that so? Masahiko sighed, I don't realize that Nanako is already 50 years old. Eternal life. Masahiko remembered that 6 years ago, he attended the funeral of his eldest nephew. He was the last generation of children from his era. Congratulations! You and Yuriko go ahead to see the little princess, I have to meet Hiruzen first. He seems to have an important message for me. Said Masahiko hesitantly. Nanako looked disappointed, but Sensei Kushina is very cute. Masahiko was shocked, what? Say her name again. It's Kushina, Uzumaki Kushina, is there anything wrong, Sensei? Masahiko took a deep breath and smiled, it's okay, what a beautiful name. Let's go see her together. Great-grandpa, Hiruzen Sensei is waiting for us on the side, Tsunade whispered. Let him wait. Let's go, Nanako, Yuriko. Masahiko then turned around and leaving the 3 children behind, while Nanako and Yuriko caught up to him with a wry smile. Tsunade, your grandpa seems to be a little bit unreliable. Ouch. Jiraiya whispered to Tsunade when suddenly a rock hit his head. Hey brat, even at this age, my ear is as sharp as ever. A pebble then hit Jiraiya in the same spot again, this one made him squat and cover his head with tears in his eyes. Stupid, said Orochimaru with a hoarse voice, but Jiraiya didn't have the strength to argue with him. Tsunade looked helplessly at her 2 teammates, then looked at Masahiko from afar, sighed, and chased after him. Hey, idiot, let's go. Orochimaru glanced at Jiraiya, then followed. After a while, Jiraiya finally recovered and stood up, then looked around. The cold wind blew through, and no one was there beside him. It seems that I was abandoned. Back to Masahiko, his pace was getting faster and faster, while Nanako and Yuriko had to run a little to keep up with him. Sensei, don't worry so much. Masahiko didn't pay attention to his disciples, all that he was thinking of is the born of Uzumaki Kushina. Another plot character was born, and it's the most important one, the mother of. However, I didn't expect that she would be Nanako's granddaughter. This makes me more like a grandpa to her, and makes her more like an aunt to Tsunade. Naruto and Tsunade will share the same generation this way. Later, he won't be able to call her Granny Tsunade. Thinking of this, Masahiko froze, then what about Minato? He will be Jiraiya's disciple. In other words, from my point of view, Kushina will be more like a grandma to him. Masahiko was so cranky and almost laughed out loud. The Naruto generations are already messed up and chaotic. Minato's disciples accepted his son as a pupil, and his masters also accepted his son as a disciple. But in the original story, Kushina is not the princess of Land of Whirlpools, she is an orphan of war. And who was the actual daimyo of the Land of Whirlpools? Under these conditions, will Kushina still be the red hot-blooded habanero? Masahiko sighed, feeling a little bit sad. A group of people rushed to the palace of the Whirlpool's daimyo. Great-grandpa. Behind Masahiko, Tsunade, and Orochimaru have finally caught up. Let's go in together. On the other hand, Jiraiya was still sitting in the same place as before, with a blank face. After a while, a figure came from the distance. It was Hiruzen, who walked closer to Jiraiya. Why are you alone? Where are Tsunade and Orochimaru? Didn't you go to see Elder Masahiko? Hiruzen asked 3 questions in a row. Jiraiya nodded, shook his head, then lowered his head. Hiruzen got even more confused. Chapter 111, Seeing an Acquaintance. Walking down the streets of the Uzumaki village, Masahiko was feeling sad. The two behind him, Tsunade and Orochimaru, were looking at each other, feeling puzzled. Unlike the when Masahiko first saw Tsunade when she was born, the birth of Kushina made Masahiko somehow anxious. He wasn't worried about how she will turn out, but about the direction of the plot. The baby girl Kushina that Masahiko has just seen was wrapped in a gold-laced quilt, which made him feel that Kushina's situation is going to be completely different from the original. In the original, Kushina is an orphan of war, but now she's the princess of the land of whirlpools. Masahiko didn't really worry about her being spoiled, because he will make sure that won't happen. But he was worried about her original character. It's impossible now to send her to Konoha and become the second generation of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. I can't take her there voluntarily. Masahiko sighed. He was in a dilemma. A lot of things changed, but this part is the only one that Masahiko didn't want it to change at all. If Kushina doesn't go to Konoha, she won't meet Minato, and they won't give birth to Konoha. If there's no Naruto, Masahiko didn't dare to think about it anymore. Great-grandpa, what's wrong? Aren't we gonna find sensei? Tsunade seemed slightly worried. It's okay, I will think about it. Masahiko sighed. What's there to think about? Masahiko jolted, it's nothing. I will look for Hiruzen Kagura. The Uzumaki village territory is not that large, and Masahiko can cover most of it. Sensing the village for a moment, Masahiko frowned, feeling puzzled. Masahiko took the 2 with him. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, Masahiko finally arrived at the land of Whirlpool's prison. He feels Jiraiya and Hiruzen's chakras from the inside. Great-grandpa, is this a prison? Tsunade said doubtfully. Masahiko nodded. That idiot. Orochimaru murmured as if he guessed something. 10 minutes later. The moment he saw Masahiko, Hiruzen started sweating and hurriedly tried to explain the situation. Elder Masahiko, it's not what you think. It's Jiraiya's fault. He said that Tsunade and Orochimaru abandoned him, so I wanted to comfort him. So? Masahiko tried to hide his smile. You comfort him by taking him to peek on the woman's bathhouse? The key to the art of voyeurism is to never get caught. But somehow this master and his disciple got caught red-handed on the spot, which made Hiruzen feel really embarrassed. Oh! Elder Masahiko, the shinobis of your country are very perceptive and strong. Hiruzen quickly tried to shift the topic. Of course. Masahiko nodded without explanation. During his decade of seclusion, Masahiko didn't do anything but training. However, every year he will choose a few talented graduates from the Uzumaki Ninja Academy and send them to Yuriko to undergo a specialized training that he prepared. After all, he can't just stay at the beach. He needed to make sure that Uzushio is safe. Those selected students made the core of Whirlpool's country police force, which is responsible for the country's security. According to Yuriko, although there was still no S-class shinobis, there have been several special jonin. Moreover, the special jonins of the Uzumaki are more like jonin. Because of their bloodline, they have a more massive chakra reserve, which makes them stronger than typical special jonin. Of course, no matter how strong they are, Masahiko didn't believe that any of them is stronger than Hiruzen. However, the latter couldn't fight back the patrol because of voyeurism, so right away to the prison. For the sake of your reputation, I will let it slide this time. Masahiko shook his head with a smile. Hiruzen rejoiced and turned to look at Jiraiya to find that he got already beaten up by Tsunade. Masahiko looked at him all swallowed up for a moment, then he glanced back at Hiruzen while scratching his head. Hiruzen then quickly cut off the topic. Elder Masahiko, Master Tobirama seems to have something important that he needs to discuss with you. Can you go with us to Konoha? Masahiko was stunned. He didn't expect that he needed him in person. Did he say anything to you? Hiruzen shook his head. It seems it's classified, Tobirama-sensei refused to tell me. Classified Masahiko pondered, and felt a little bit curious, what kind of things happened that he couldn't even tell Hiruzen about. Masahiko nodded. Since Kushina was born, he wanted to see if Minato has also appeared in Konoha anyway. He wasn't worried about Suzuki's parents since their situation is a little bit different. Thus, as long as Minato is not lost, Masahiko felt that there will always be a way for Team 7 to be formed. Great-grandpa. So you will come to Konoha with us? Tsunade has finished teaching Jiraiya a lesson and looked at Masahiko. Masahiko sighed, I won't teach you gambling, and you won't learn, so give it up. Let's go, Hiruzen. Wait, Elder Masahiko. Tsunade, what about Nawake? Up until this moment, Hiruzen couldn't sense his presence anywhere, so he asked. He's over there. Masahiko pointed. Yuna was walking with the little Senju boy. Yuna, I'm going to Konoha, how about you, are you going to see Sakumo? Masahiko said with a smile. Yuna hesitantly shook her head. I won't go. I need to work on my hand cannon. Hand cannon. Masahiko suddenly felt stunned, he remembered that his force field can negate the gun's recoil. If that's the case, can I use it as a weapon? The more Masahiko thought about, the more his eyes were glimmering. With this weapon, I will be able to shoot enemies at range. It will be so much fun. Masahiko's brain circuits were somehow going haywire, thinking it would be like Counter-Strike. In the end, Masahiko took his way to Konoha with a sealing scroll. 2 kilometers away from the Uzumaki village, Masahiko sighed and looked at Nawake, who followed the group with his little steps. With this little guy, would we ever reach Konoha? Everyone, brace yourself, I will fly us. Masahiko smiled and turned his head toward the group. Don't. Jiraiya was frightened, it seems he's developing a phobia for flying. However, it's futile. Masahiko levitated them all and flew toward Konoha. Half a minute later, 2 Umbu appeared at their foothold before taking off. Flying surely is faster than running. About half an hour, they arrived at Konoha. This is because Nawake was with him that he couldn't fly too fast. When they arrive at the village outskirt, Masahiko didn't stop at the main gate but took them directly to the hokage's building. Many villagers saw them with shocked expressions while pointing at them. Hiruzen looked below, then smiled bitterly, Elder Masahiko, I don't think this is a good idea. What's wrong? Viewing Konoha from the sky like this is not an everyday, enjoy it, you might not have another chance to see it. Okay, Hiruzen sighed, then enjoyed the scene with the others. When Masahiko reached the hokage building, he saw Tobirama there standing in front of the huge glass window looking up at him. Masahiko then landed the others and flew directly in from the open window. Second grandpa, it's been a while, I see you are stronger. Tobirama spoke slowly. Masahiko nodded, noticing the white hair in the middle of Tobirama's head and didn't say anything for a while. Second grandpa, I've called you here to introduce you to an acquaintance of mine. An acquaintance? Masahiko wondered, looking at Tobirama's mysterious expression. Chapter 112, The Underworld. Sure enough, you are doing the human experiments again. Masahiko let out a sigh and followed Tobirama to the underground cave, which was destroyed by Hashirama. Masahiko didn't know when the place was cleaned up and reconstructed again. But when Masahiko walked inside, even the layout of the site was the same as before, the same human organs, and the same summoned beast corpses. However, the only difference in there was the many chakra fluctuations. It seems that the war gave him a lot of opportunities to catch more people. This chakra. As he walked deeper, Masahiko felt a slightly familiar chakra. Sensei, Elder Masahiko. A familiar figure appeared in front of Masahiko, which made his face severe, and his heart uneasy. None of them responded, and the two just continued to go deeper. Tobirama, Masahiko hesitated for a while, then he said, I don't really mind your study for the Edo Tensei, but why did you involve Danzo? Hiruzen is not really suited for this kind of research. Among my students, only Danzo has the talent for this. Tobirama responded. Then you Masahiko stopped talking. Don't worry, Grandpa, Danzo is only restricted to the periphery, Tobirama replied with a smile. Masahiko didn't say more, but secretly thought, you're underestimating your disciple, and it might end up with me wiping this shit in the future. I know it's hard to deal with your own disciple, but the fact that Tobirama saw that Danzo is suitable for human experiments proves that he's speculating something already. Going to the deepest room, they arrived at a place that resembles a jail. Cages after cages are placed next to each other. In each cage, there is a person who looked like comatose. Probably these people were injected with some kind of medicine. Masahiko only took a glance and couldn't determine their numbers. Second Grandpa, these are some of the ninjas that got caught in the war, and refused to surrender. Noticing Masahiko's expression, Tobirama offered an explanation. I already guessed the person you want me to see. Although, I'm really looking forward to it. Masahiko shook his head. Forget it, I won't try to scold you anymore. He already did that before. Tobirama smiled bitterly, and he will scold me again. Edo Tensei. Tobirama quickly made 4 hand signs and then clapped his hand together. A coffin slowly rose from the earth, then the lid fell to the ground revealing a familiar figure. Hashirama looked slightly confused at first, then he quickly moved his hands and used a hand sign, would release secret technique, nativity of a world of trees. Obviously, he was already prepared. Big brother. Tobirama didn't expect Hashirama to unleash such a jutsu right after he was reincarnated. Masahiko smiled bitterly, I know it's wrong, but I don't want to see you get buried again. And Tobirama, how many times you've reincarnated your elder brother, to the point that he wants to go back immediately. Rantan Light Fang. Lasers came from Masahiko's hands, and by waving his finger, the emerging roots and trees were cut. Hashirama's ninjutsu wasn't that strong. Obviously, the strength of the reincarnated Hashirama is far weaker than the original. Do you want to bury this grandpa at once? Hashirama finally noticed Masahiko and sighed, Second Grandpa, how you could agree with this repulsive experiment. Ha ha ha, the jutsu was already completed when he told me. Anyway, it's nice seeing you again. Masahiko said with a smile. Big brother, please calm down. Oh no, I'm in trouble. Hashirama seemed helpless and slightly speechless. Forget about your brother, Hashirama. Masahiko interrupted, tell me about the afterlife. This second grandpa is a little bit curious. Hashirama pondered for a while, Second Grandpa, it's not very clear for me either. At the moment of my death, I remembered a lot of people, then I finally saw my own father standing near a campfire, Hashirama said with an awkward smile on his face. I thought that I will saw other people too, but I only saw my father. Ha ha ha, and he scolded me for a while. Masahiko smiled, Butsuma? I bet he was angry that you didn't destroy the Uchiha. Ah, yes, he also said that I had the strength to unify the 5 great shinobi villages, and I just wasted all of that. This what should have happened, brother. On the side of the room, Tobirama said solemnly. Hashirama's face looked stiff, while Tobirama seemed very emotional. Masahiko didn't really pay attention to the 2 brothers' reunion and fell into deep thinking. Hashirama saw his father, Butsuma. The same thing happened to Kakashi in the original story. Is this due to the 2 being blood-related, or is it strength? Masahiko hesitated for a while, it should be mostly strength. Just like when Obito spirit briefly visited Kakashi and landed in his Mangekyo Sharinan's dimension, proving that as long as you're strong enough, you can travel back and forth between yin and yang. All attributes at LV9 I should be able to do it then. But what about when all are LV10? Masahiko was very curious about the underworld in Naruto World. Did you see Madara there, Hashirama? Masahiko smiled, he tempted to ask this question. The 2 brothers who were still arguing were stunned. Obviously, this question had not been asked before. Yes, we decided to build a new village below. Hashirama hesitated, then said. Brother, you're still planning things with that person. Tobirama shouted, and the 2 started a quarrel again. Masahiko sighed slightly, then said inside, Hashirama, you know that Madara isn't dead. Masahiko didn't push this subject anymore. Watching these 2 brothers argue, reminded him of how much he really missed the old days. Second Grandpa. Hashirama's shouting made Masahiko go back to his senses. We have been through this before, help me bring this place down, we can't let him go back to this road. Masahiko looked at Tobirama, who seemed very nervous. Forget it, Masahiko shook his head, this technique will come useful in the future. Hashirama was puzzled, do you also want to use this technique? Yes, when I'm stronger, I will use this ninjutsu to fully resurrect you. Masahiko spoke slowly. Hashirama hesitated for a long time, then he sighed, "Second grandpa, I'm already a dead man and such a resurrection." Masahiko ignored Hashirama and turned to look at Tobirama. "Is it difficult to learn this technique?" Masahiko already considered this again and felt that it's more convenient for him to learn the Edo Tensei. Tobirama said, "For you, it shouldn't be difficult, the key part is to connect your chakra to the underworld. With your chakra amount, it should be easy to reach the underworld." Masahiko continued to ignore Hashirama's whining and listened to Tobirama's explanation. "So, the first step is to communicate with the underworld?" Masahiko nodded, just wondering what the underworld in Naruto World looks like. After a few seals, Masahiko closed his eyes and tried to reach the underworld with his chakra. "So this is the underground? What's so difficult about it? You can sense it right away." Masahiko could sense the underworld right away, but he later found out that even if he could sense it, he couldn't reach it. After half an hour of trying, Masahiko took a deep breath and frowned, looking at Tobirama. "Tobirama, what kind of method did you use to make your chakra reach the underworld?" "I just used 70% of my chakra, and I couldn't make any connection with it." Tobirama then answered, "You could sense the underworld? Then you should be able to reach it with your chakra easily. Actually, the chakra amount of a jonin should be enough." "What? I already used 70% of my," Masahiko said, but halfway he looked shocked. "Wait, which underworld are we talking about again?" Chapter 113, It's Not What You Think. Ignoring Hashirama's nagging, Masahiko and Tobirama simply bid farewell to him, then the Edo Tensei technique was dispelled by Tobirama. "Second grandpa, let's go." Masahiko nodded while his mind was full of thoughts. There can't be another underworld, right? Masahiko's head was in such a mess. Even if my soul originally crossed over, my body is living in the world of Naruto. The chakra that I used to communicate with the underworld also came from this world. So the underworld that I felt must belong to this world. Masahiko thought about it for a while, then gradually cleared his mind. First of all, no matter what, it's impossible for another underworld to exist in this world. However, I just exerted a lot of my chakra. Still, the distance didn't change, and I couldn't reach it, nor connect to it. There's only one possibility then, Masahiko sighed, someone is blocking my connection with the underworld and made my chakras shift direction and rotate around. As for who it is, Masahiko didn't really have to think about it a lot. Rikudo Sennin has been monitoring the shinobi world for so many years, and it is estimated that he already found out about my abnormality, which should be how I broke the mortal's limit and gained a long life. Masahiko smiled bitterly. If it weren't for this trouble, Masahiko would have really forgotten about the six paths who's watching over this realm all the time. Then it's a good thing that I've spent the last decade on practicing so hard, this will make him feel some easiness, and he will never guess the existence of my system this way. I should wait until I have enough witness points, then maybe I can make all my attributes reach level 9, if it were to happen then I will be at least at the level of the sixth path. Even he will have trouble dealing with me. Although Masahiko has lived for so many years, he was still afraid to die. However, in case he's killed by Black Zetsu, then he can only die with regret while thinking how stupid he is. But if the abnormality in his own body attracted the Rikudo Sennin's attention and he smites him, then he will die unjustly. A cough from Tobirama brought Masahiko back from his deep thoughts and made him frown while looking at Tobirama. "Tobirama, didn't you recover from your injury?" Tobirama smiled bitterly, "I already did, I was fine at that time, but unlike you, I'm 57 years old now." Masahiko was stunned for a moment, then he sighed. Tobirama then said, "Truthfully, I didn't call you only to see my elder brother. The war has finally stopped, but it's estimated that the peace won't last long. I need your help with the selection of the third hokage." Masahiko was stunned, "What do you need me for?" "As long as it's the same as the previous two selections, the right man will naturally be selected, and I believe it will be Hiruzen." "I really don't know about that, Grandpa," Tobirama replied. Masahiko was surprised by Tobirama's quick reply. "At first, I thought Hiruzen is the best choice, but in the past few years, he seemed to be quite indecisive. Although he has a good heart, I don't know if he's suitable to lead in times of war. In contrast, Danzo, his character is perfect to lead Konoha in times of war. Yes, he's shady, but it's harmless for now." After listening to this explanation, Masahiko gradually understood Tobirama's intention. Masahiko hesitated for a moment, thinking, if I let Danzo become the third hokage, I will yield a lot of witness points, but the plot will completely collapse afterward. And Danzo? After thinking about it, Masahiko said, I believe that Konoha needs a benevolent and kind hokage. Hiruzen is the most popular, and he's also the hero type. If you still feel worried, you can always let Danzo help from the side. When Masahiko said this, he suddenly realized something. Isn't that the case in the original? Is it because I have a prejudice against Danzo? After a moment of contemplation, Masahiko shook his head. Danzo did a lot of things for the sake of Konoha at first, but his intentions later were completely incomprehensible. Masahiko fell deep into his thoughts, but Tobirama suddenly sighed next to him, which made him obviously a bit embarrassed. Masahiko smiled, how come you're only thinking about these two, don't you have 4 other apprentices? Tobirama shook his head, 2 of my disciples are shinobi civilians, none of them can become hokage, and the other clans will never support them. Akimichi is not powerful enough compared with the others, and Kagami although he's different from the other Uchiha, I still can't trust Uchiha clan. Civilian shinobi can't become hokage, huh? Masahiko smirked, but he didn't refute, he knew that it's impossible. But I heard that the Uchiha has changed a lot in the past 2 years? Tobirama nodded, Kagami is doing a good job, but still some people can't be trusted. Then don't overthink, a hokage, after all, must be the person considered to be the strongest in the village, Masahiko suggested. Tobirama paused for a while, then it is still Danzo. As soon as he heard his answer, Masahiko's face became darker, and almost said, are you trying to tease me or something? In the original, although the title of the god of shinobi became a joke after Hashirama, Hiruzen also that title for a reason, the guy had proficiency in 5 nature element releases. What is proficiency exactly? Judging by Masahiko's system, from LV6 to LV7 is proficiency, while LV8 is considered the limit for mortal beings. In other words, without the Sage Mode or Hachiman techniques, Hiruzen will be able to compete with Masahiko 10 years ago. Although Masahiko has the dust release, he cannot be compared to Hiruzen when it comes to Taijutsu, because of his strong summoning beast. Hiruzen is probably ranked around SS. But he actually said that he's not stronger than Danzo. Even if he didn't reach his peak, he should be ranked S+ by now, how can Danzo be stronger? Thinking of this, Masahiko suddenly was stunned, hey, you didn't teach the Edo Tensei technique to Danzo, right? Tobirama shook his head, not that. With his talent alone he already developed a lot of ninjutsu based on your Raise Non. His talent for the wind release is astonishing. I believe in the future it might be equal to my water release. Your water release? Masahiko was shocked. From his point of view, Tobirama's water release should have reached the limit of mortal, which is level 8. Masahiko didn't expect Danzo to have such a potential. For a moment, Masahiko went silent, he didn't know what to say. Over the years, he forgot that he taught Danzo and Hiruzen's fathers the Raise Non back then. Unexpectedly, his unintentional actions actually caused such a big impact. After pondering for a long time, Masahiko smiled embarrassedly, Tobirama, although strength is important, but also the recognition of everyone is more important. I think Hiruzen is the most suitable for this. Tobirama frowned, Grandpa, you didn't think this way a moment ago. But I start to feel that you really don't like Danzo very much. Masahiko shook his head, no, I just prefer Hiruzen. Tobirama froze for a moment and looked weird. Masahiko realized that he made a mistake, no, damn it. It's not like that. Suddenly Tobirama started giggling. Masahiko was stunned, is that a joke? You dare to make fun of your grandpa because you got a little bit older? No grandpa, how can I? Chapter 114, The Awkward Hyoga Patriarch. Masahiko once again moved to Konoha. Originally, his intention was to see Tobirama, then return to the Uzumaki clan. Unlike the first war, Masahiko knew that its fuse was Hashirama's death, and he prepared for it. However, this second war, Masahiko had very little information about and didn't really know what started it. He only remembers the 3 legendary sun in battle, and how Jiraiya accepted his 3 disciples afterward. However, since the only thing he cared about is the selection of the third hokage, Masahiko decided to receive his witness points, then go. In the case of these 3 disciples, since the Uzumaki clan won't get destroyed, will Nagato get born in the Uzumaki village? In Masahiko's point of view, Nagato has a very high talent. Not everyone can withstand the Rinnegan power and actually use it. He actually feels that these eyes have dragged him down and stopped his potential, the same thing as Kakashi, otherwise, he would have become very powerful. If he gets born in the Uzumaki village, I will take him as my apprentice, and help him grow stronger. He will help me later protect the village, and I will finally have the chance to relax. Masahiko suddenly came up with this idea. As for Madara, you can ask someone else to resurrect you. Masahiko laughed. Masahiko pushed the door open, then looked at the Senjo household. The Uzumaki station in Konoha has been occupied by the Shimura and Sarutobi clan, which keeps growing. Masahiko had no choice but to stay here this time when he returned to Konoha. Masahiko sensed a familiar chakra. Mito is really amazing. At such an old age, the amount of her chakra is still increasing. I think her control over the Kyuubi's chakra has become even more proficient. Masahiko then walked for a while, then came in front of Mito's door. It was just like the previous time before he could even knock. Mito opened the door for him. Masahiko was stunned. He didn't see her for 10 years, but her face remained unchanged. I see that you're doing better than Tobirama looks so old now. Second grandpa, you are not aging too. Mito smiled, then she said, but I'm afraid this is just an appearance. Masahiko nodded, he then stopped talking about age. I won't stay long this time. I will return after the selection of the third hokage. So do you have any suggestions for the candidate of the third hokage position? I don't really have any suggestions, but I prefer Hiruzen. Masahiko was shocked. Is it because he's Tobirama disciple? Mito shook his head. After I have perfectly controlled over the Kyuubi's chakra, I gain the ability to feel the darkness inside the one's heart. Although he tries to hide it, Danzo's heart is filled with malice. Masahiko suddenly looked surprised. He forgot about this ability. Then why didn't you tell Tobirama? Mito smiled bitterly. Basically, everyone will have a touch of malice in their heart from time to time. Tobirama is not that different from Danzo. But I prefer Hiruzen because the darkness in his heart is relatively smaller. Masahiko nodded his head. Yes, it's reasonable, no one can be 100% kind. Mito smiled. There is Nawake, and maybe Hashirama too. In fact, I feel like that child resembles him more than my two sons. Masahiko sighed. Yes, but Hashirama is an idiot. That's why he could always be kind. As for Nawake, he's still young, but what about me? Mito shook her head lightly with a smile. I can't sense your heart. Masahiko thought that the system is probably isolating his inner heart from her. Otherwise, he would be detected by other perceptual ninjutsu, and this might expose the existence of the system. Well, you would be a fool if you thought that this grandpa will let you read his mind and know the secret of immortality. Mito giggled, shaking her head, but she didn't believe a word he said. Masahiko still needs to explain, when suddenly a voice came from the outside. Elder Masahiko, someone outside is asking for you. Masahiko waved at Mito, then went out. Who is it? Masahiko asked. It's the patriarch of the Hyuga clan. Masahiko froze. Huh? Why is he looking for me? Without saying much, Masahiko went out. Outside the Senjo mansion, the Hyuga patriarch, who looked already old, was standing outside, accompanied by two similar-looking boys. Masahiko's expression changed for a moment, then he smiled and said, I haven't seen you for 10 years, you look quite older. The Hyuga patriarch smiled bitterly, and you are getting younger and younger, elder. Masahiko looked around. What's the matter? Let's talk inside. The patriarch and the two kids followed Masahiko inside the guest room, where he lived temporarily. Elder Masahiko, this is my two grandchildren, Hisashi and Hayashi, and I hope that you will take them as disciples. Cough cough. Masahiko was just chilling there, ready to take a sip out of his drink, when he heard that he almost choked. Masahiko is not surprised that these two boys were Hisashi and Hayashi, he already speculated this, but he didn't expect that the Hyuga patriarch would ask this. How is that possible? How can I accept a Hyuga as disciple? Masahiko whispered, feeling puzzled. However, after thinking and contemplating for a while, he gradually began to understand the embarrassing situation of the Hyuga clan in Konoha. The third Hokage selection has been basically settled between Hiruzen and Danzo. After the selection, the elders of Konoha will also change. Whoever wins will become the Hokage while the loser will become elder. The Uchiha still has Izumi, and the other seat is presumably will be seated by one of Tobirama's other disciples. So the odds of the Hyoga to have a high position in Konoha's government are very small. However, I can't accept such a thing. Masahiko smiled bitterly. By accepting Nanako as his disciple, he turned Kushina into Minato's grandmother. If he takes Hayashi as his disciple, he will turn Hinata into Naruto's grandma. Masahiko suddenly was stunned. This seems quite harmonious. Love between a grandma and her grandson, this is a little bit interesting. Masahiko looked up. Watching the nervous old man, and his ignorant grandsons, Masahiko smiled. I agree, send me a scroll of your gentle fist daily routine tomorrow. The Hyoga patriarch rejoiced at first, then he looked stunned. Gentle fist? You don't have Byakugan, what's the use of learning it? Masahiko was also stunned. You asked me to become their master, of course, I need to know gentle fist, right? The Hyoga patriarch smiled bitterly. They are only 6. You only need to teach them the basics. And let me worry about their gentle fist training. However, Masahiko doesn't want to. The basics? Like extracting chakra and using transformation technique? Are you really asking a great elder like me to teach your grandson basics? Goodbye. Hyoga patriarch smiled bitterly and was about to explain, but he found himself and his grandsons already floating and flying out to the door. Looking at the door closing behind him, the patriarch was stunned. Chapter 115, Elderly and Gentle Fist. I choose the big one. Tsunade's shout emitted loudly in Masahiko's ears, which made him rub them painfully. Lower your voice, Tsunade, and what about you two? On the other hand, Jiraiya and Orochimaru looked at each other in a mutual agreement. We choose the small one. Masahiko sigh and then roll the dice. 1, 2, 3. It's 6. Small ones it is. Tsunade clenched her fist. You too. Jiraiya sweating. I don't need the money. Me too. Orochimaru followed. Tsunade nodded, revealing a tiny satisfaction. Masahiko shook his head with a wry smile. Tsunade, do you find it fun playing like this? It's your fault, you're the one who refused to teach me, now all my money will be theirs. This kind of scene has happened a few times before. Every day before noon, Tsunade always takes her 2 teammates and come to find Masahiko. He can't help it, she always uses please great-grandpa against him, which makes him defenseless. In desperation, Masahiko could only be the dealer of the game responsible for shaking the dice for the 3 kids. Masahiko thought of giving Tsunade some points. But after long observation, he discovered Tsunade is always choosing the wrong numbers. As if she's banded by some kind of seal, compared to Masahiko's gambling attribute, he estimated that her skill must be negative level 10, and helping her won't change a thing. Great-grandpa, let's do it again. Tsunade shouted again. Masahiko shook his head and let out a sigh, then rolled the dice again. The cup fell on the table. Tsunade wanted to call a number, but she forced herself to stop. You two pick first. Jiraiya and Orochimaru look at each other's eyes and then said, we still choose small. Masahiko smiles, you two are quite tacit. Tsunade, how about you? Tsunade rolled her eyes, I also choose small. Then, we choose big. Again in unison. Bang. Masahiko got startled by the sound. Tsunade was so angry that she hit the table with her hand. Orochimaru and Jiraiya got vigilant. Tsunade took a few breaths, then hit Jiraiya hard with a punch. Masahiko smiled, watching Jiraiya breaking through the window and flying out. Tsunade, you really have a preference for Jiraiya. Jiraiya reappeared again, limping back while shouting and pointing with his finger. Tsunade, why is it always me? Tsunade didn't answer but picked up the cup and stressfully looked at the dices, which turned out to be small. I won. Tsunade rejoiced. Masahiko twitched his mouth, and hesitated a bit, then still decided not to tell her that when she slammed the table, she changed the number, which was originally big. Tsunade, who felt really happy that she won once, was no longer entangled on playing, and finally noticed the other 2 people in the room. Great-grandpa, who are these 2 Hyoga kids? Masahiko smiled, oh, those are my 2 newly received apprentices. Are you teaching them how to control their chakra? No, I'm teaching them concentration. You see, I chose this place because we're so noisy. Still, they're sitting there so focused and refining their chakra. This will help them a lot in the future. Masahiko replied. Oh, is that so? Tsunade nodded, and actually believed him, while Orochimaru, on the side, had a strange expression on his face. Tsunade. Why is it always me? Limping, step by step, Jiraiya finally made it to the room again, but Tsunade gave him another cold glance. Tsunade then turned to Masahiko and said, Great Grandpa, we will not bother you again, you can continue teaching them. As the three walked further and further away, Masahiko looked around, then let out a long sigh while shaking his head helplessly. There was a big hole with the shape of a human body on the wall of the Senjus guest room. Such a big rumble didn't cause any of the clansmen to check the situation out. Obviously, they were used to the temper of the Senjus little princess. Masahiko looked back at the twins who were meditating and refining their chakra, then sighed again. These two kids are reminding me of myself when I was younger and very focused on training, but that when I was younger, it's really a pity that I'm such an unreliable grandpa now. Early this morning, the hokage patriarch came again with his grandsons. Yesterday, after seeing how Masahiko made them float, he didn't have a choice but to acknowledge Masahiko's strength. He threw him a book and then left his grandson. Originally, Masahiko asked him because he never thought that the hokage patriarch will never give up on their secret art, but when he took a glance at the book, he found that it was the introduction to Gentle Fist, which made Masahiko speechless. Masahiko didn't even open it, he threw it aside, and made the two kids sit there gathering their chakra. However, hours have passed, and two kids were still there training patiently, which made Masahiko somewhat amazed. Okay, refining chakra for a long time will damage your body, get up, it's time we do some physical training, I'll teach you this introduction for the Gentle Fist. The twins opened their eyes and looked at each other. Thank you, Sensei. Don't call me Sensei, because I will start to feel like one. I'm more like kindergartner teacher. Masahiko opened the book, Introduction of Gentle Fist, and took a glance. So let's teach you the two basic moves. First, the initial stance. Masahiko stood straight, then he lowered his stance while moving the left foot a little to the back, then he bent his knee, lowering his center of gravity, and slowly raised his hands. Seeing this, the twins immediately tried to imitate Masahiko, which made him nod with satisfaction. The second form, left hand open, the right hand like a scissor, and wild horse mane. The third form, white crane spreads its wings. Practicing this made Masahiko feel that something was wrong. Why does it feel so familiar? You two practice the first three forms first. To understand this, Masahiko quickly crossed his legs and sit on the ground while looking at the book. While reading the other pages, Masahiko twitched his mouth, as the familiarity became stronger and stronger. Is the 24 form of Tai Chi? I have learned it in the physical education class at my university. Although it has been so long, Masahiko still didn't forget how to do it, and reading these familiar moves made him certain of this. So, Kishimoto created the Gentle Fist style based on Tai Chi? Just like Kinkaku and Ginkaku, the two characters are based on. Masahiko pondered for a moment but didn't want to overthink it. Note, Kinkaku and Ginkaku are based on two Demon King brothers from Journey to the West. Masahiko followed the introduction and practiced twice every move. With the knowledge he had from his previous life, Masahiko quickly became proficient. Looking at the gazes of admiration the two kids were giving him, Masahiko shook his head with a wry smile. Somehow, he became a genius of Gentle Fist under this great pressure. You two will go back home now, it's a little bit too early today. I will practice this first and teach you tomorrow. Hi, Sensei. Watching the twins going home, Masahiko smiled. He really wanted to see the patriarch's expression when they tell him how good he was. What? Masahiko looked dumbfounded when he accidentally opened up his status bar. Gentle Fist, LV1, 100. It actually became a skill. Masahiko was speechless. I always wanted to have this kind of high-speed taijutsu technique. Masahiko took the stance, attack here and then whoosh attack there. However, does this old man's body really fit to practice Gentle Fist? Chapter 116, Jonin Test. Time flies, and it's been a month since the first time the Gentle Fist skill appeared on Masahiko's status bar. Gentle Fist, LV3, 61,000. The progress is quite fast, and it's not affected by age at all, even though I didn't practice it every day. During this time, Masahiko seemed more like those elderlies who practiced Tai Chi in his previous life. He will get up early in the morning and practice his routine twice, then he will feel inexplicably comfortable. Alas, I thought that when I level up my gentle fist skill, I will be able to learn the secret moves on my own. It turned out that I was naive, or did I not reach the required level? Looking at the twins in front of Masahiko, who were practicing gentle fist, Masahiko smiled and said, "Have your grandpa talked to you about the proficient degree that you need to reach before learning the hokage secrets ninjutsu?" The two looked at each other, then shook their heads. Masahiko sighed, "It seems the twins haven't been taught anything yet." Looking at the sky, it was almost dark. It's been a month and a half since I came to Konoha. When will they choose the next hokage? Damn, why it's so hard to get witness points? Masahiko sighed while waving to the twins. Watching them walking away, Masahiko felt that this month and a half was a waste of time. He indeed grew stronger because of the slight progress of the gentle fist training, but Masahiko couldn't bear waiting any longer. Masahiko is too lazy to go to the hokage office, so he just waited for Tobirama to come home. It might be because of the task review office that Masahiko has established before, or it may be because the war was over. Either way, the hokage didn't have a lot of things to do these days. Therefore, the sun hasn't been completely set yet, but Tobirama already came back home. "Tobirama, come here." Masahiko didn't go out much these days, and he discovered another usage of his LV8 wind release, which can accurately convey his voice for a certain distance and emit it inside the other's ears. Tobirama froze for a moment. He couldn't see him anywhere, but it seems that Masahiko was calling for him. "Second grandpa, are you looking for me?" Masahiko nodded, "I have been here for more than a month. Haven't you decided who will be the next hokage?" "I can't decide this by myself. I've also considered your advice, so 2 years from now, we will hold an election." Tobirama replied. Masahiko's face turned pale. Although he finally decided not to back up Danzo, it seems that Masahiko will have wait 2 more years. It's really hard to get witness points these days. Masahiko sighed and planned to go back to the Uzumaki village first. Otherwise, he might become a kindergartner teacher in Konoha. All the big clans in Konoha heard that Masahiko accepted 2 hokage children as his apprentices, so they're now trying to offer him some of their children too. If that's the case, then I will go back first and wait until the election. Masahiko shook his head and said. Tobirama quickly responded, "You're leaving so soon?" "Ah, yes, if I stay any longer, I will end up opening a private kindergartner class here in Konoha." Tobirama smiled awkwardly, "I've heard about it too. You've accepted the 2 boys from the Hyoga clan as your disciples, right?" "No, it's just to pass these boring times. By the way, you should consider learning the gentle fist technique. It's good for old men." "Old man?" Tobirama sighed bitterly. "Things will get exciting here in Konoha, don't you want to stay here and see it?" Masahiko got shocked. "Exciting?" Tobirama then took out a scroll from sleeves and gave it to Masahiko. "The scroll is an announcement for a joint jonin exam. Is there such a thing? I would understand if it was a joint jonin exam between villages, but isn't the jonin is usually chosen by their performance and completion of various difficult tasks?" Tobirama nodded, "Yes, originally they're evaluated by the hokage, but in the past 2 years, we couldn't produce good shinobi because of the lack of tasks, and the war." Masahiko shook his head, "The war has just ended, and you're already trying to scare other villages? But can you be sure that Konoha will win this exam? Their shinobi has also tempered in battles. There are maybe some 30 to 40 years old shinobi who never get promotion but always participated in battles. This kind of enemies will be the hardest to deal with." "It doesn't matter, Grandpa, we have 2 prominent candidates, who have been taught by Hiruzen. They only need to get a little bit stronger, then they will be ready next year for the exam." "Only 2? Masahiko was surprised. Orochimaru has already become a jonin not a long time ago. Speaking of this, Tobirama shook his head with regret. "So it's only Tsunade and Jiraiya? They will be 16 years old next year, can you ensure their victory?" Tobirama looked around, then whispered, "Well, the exam will be held in Konoha, so maybe we can prepare something in advance. I hope that you will stay and help." Masahiko gasped, and then he smiled helplessly, "So, you mean cheating?" Tobirama shook his head, "No, we will just add small insurance. I thought we should promote a certain genin to the chinin ranks, then let him participate in this exam, just to ensure that one of ours will be the winner." "Wait, why would you do that?" Masahiko gasped again, Mato die? Masahiko has also met Kanikiro and his uncle several times, these days. That dude is 18 years old but he looks like 30 years old, he's still a genin. Kanikiro said that Dai never been able to pass the written test because it had a lot of questions about the basic knowledge of cells that Tobirama has added. Tobirama nodded, yes, it seems you already know about him too. If it wasn't for your disciple, Kanikiro, I would have never noticed him. Well, these are counted as multiple insurance then, which countries are you planning to invite? Masahiko nodded, revealing his interest. Well, I'm inviting Tsunagakuer, Kirigakuer, Yugakuer, Omegakuer. Tobirama listed a lot of villages. These are a lot of villages. Not all of them will agree, but an invitation is still required. In short, except for Komagakuer and Iwagakuer, I'm gonna send invitations for everyone, and the time will be fixed on March 25th. Tobirama replied. Well, you're not lying, this is gonna be exciting. I also want the Uzumaki to participate. Before the exam, I will go back to the clan, and find some talented young people to promote them to Jonin. Masahiko responded with a smile. Tobirama nodded without objection. So, you're gonna be busy, Tobirama. But this grandpa got a little bit excited, tell me more. What kind of test will it be? How many rounds? There will be 2 rounds. The first is the written test to see how they handle unexpected emergencies during test. The second is actual combat assessment, and comprehensive evaluation. For now, the judges will be me and the kages or elders from the major participating villages. Awesome! Masahiko seemed enthusiastic. I remember that I've done a written test before for the selection of my 3 disciples. I really miss those days. Tobirama hesitated a bit but didn't have any choice looking at Masahiko's sad expression. Second grandpa, I will ask you to help with the questions of the first round, but don't make it too difficult for the kids. You've seen the work of your grandpa before, you can rest assured. Tobirama sighed and suddenly started regretting saying this. Chapter 117, Goodbye Generation Zero. Time has passed, and in a blink of an eye, it's already 25 years since the establishment of Konoha. Half a year ago, Masahiko went back to Uzumaki village and took 3 patrol team members. They were elite Chunin at the age of around 16 to 17 years old. Masahiko was embarrassed to let the 30 and 40 years old Chunin partake the joint Jonin test. At this time, on the Konoha training ground, Masahiko is conducting a combat training for 5 boys and a girl. As for Orochimaru, because he didn't need to take the Jonin exam, Hiruzen decided to give him special training. Old devil, why am I the only one that needs to do physical training? On the side, Jiraiya said while sweating all over his body. It's not clear how and when, but Old Devil has become Masahiko's nickname. Masahiko shook his head, look at these 4, and tell me which one you can win against in Taijutsu. The 3 Uzumaki teens were strictly trained from a young age, although their overall strength is not comparable with Jiraiya. In terms of physical skills alone, Jiraiya couldn't put a finger on them for the past 6 months. Jiraiya looked at the other 4 and sighed, I will definitely surpass them soon. Masahiko nodded, yes, be ambitious. Therefore we will have to double to amount of training. Only 2 months are left for the exam. As soon as Masahiko raised his hand, Jiraiya almost fell on the ground while doing squat. You, old devil! I have only doubled the gravity. Do you know that your predecessors used to practice in X100 gravity room? What? That ancestor is powerful, Jiraiya muttered, then continued his training. Masahiko didn't say anything, then whispered, yeah, your predecessors from Dragon Ball. Masahiko then turned around to look at the other 4 people who were sparring. Even though it should be a sparring session for 4 people, it's more like a 3-on-1 battle between the 3 Uzumaki teens and Tsunade. Even though Tsunade is at a disadvantage, she could still hold herself against them. The main reason this happens is that Tsunade's fierce fists. The 3 could only dodge as a last resort. Masahiko decided to put the 3 of them against her, also summoned 3 small slugs, and attached it to their bodies. Tsunade's punches were unbearable to anyone, only Jiraiya could stand it, which was really weird even to Masahiko. Huh? Masahiko sensed something, and an umbu suddenly appeared before him. Elder Masahiko, Lord Second has summoned you. Masahiko smiled and said, Sakumo, you are Yuna's friend, so just call me Grandpa. Sakumo Hatake, At the age of 15 he became an umbu, and just after 2 years of joining, he became the umbu captain. Sakumo scratched his head and didn't answer. Tell Tobirama, I know, and I will pass by later. Understood, elder grandpa. Under Masahiko's stare, Sakumo finally dropped the formalities. Sakumo flickered away, and Masahiko nodded with satisfaction. It seems after a few years, I might finally get to see Kakashi. He then turned his attention to the 5 trainees, who were still practicing, and waved his hand. You also heard it, Tobirama is looking for me, so you're gonna train by yourselves. Yes, Grand Elder. The young boys of the Uzumaki responded at the same time. Great Grandpa, be safe, Tsunade said, while she was patting from exhaustion, then she sat on the ground. When Masahiko walked away, Jiraiya also stopped his training and sat on the ground. Hi, finally, I'm exhausted, you old devil. As soon as he breathed a sigh of relief, he looked up to see a small stone flying toward him and barely dodged it. The stone then hit the ground, making a small hole inside it. Old devil! Are you trying to kill me? In the distance, Masahiko nodded slowly and smiled, good, a little progress. When Masahiko arrived at the hokage building, Tobirama was already downstairs waiting for him. You're actually waiting for me? Is there anything urgent? Tobirama smiled, then shook his head, I'm not waiting for you, I was waiting for the guests from Sunagakure. Who's coming that you have to greet them personally, the hokage? Masahiko asked and looked at the distance. It's the elder of Sunagakure, a woman named Cho, Tobirama explained. Masahiko's expression changed, then smiled bitterly, thinking, you're trying to introduce her, but I've already teased her. Cho was personally leading the team, followed by 3 Sunagakure shinobi. Masahiko squinted his eyes, feeling that 2 young boys and the girl are unusually familiar. They were also carrying some kind of bag behind them, but he already speculated that these were their puppets. In front of the hokage building, Masahiko stood on the side of the pathway, ready to greet the Suna team. As she was getting closer, Cho noticed Masahiko, and her expression suddenly changed. Masahiko smiled and then walked to her. Little Cho, it's been 25 years. You have become an elder of Suna, I see. But I bet you regret not coming with me to Konoha. Cho was so confused, I didn't expect you to be still alive. Masahiko frowned, what did you just say? Tobirama was shocked, second grandpa, do you know her? Do you remember the time I went to the land of sand to catch Shikaku? I met her there, at that time she was only 11 or 12 years old. I was hoping to bring a genius shinobi like her back to Konoha. Tobirama smiled and shook his head bitterly, this second grandpa really do as he pleases. One of the boys in Chio's team suddenly acted weird and whispered, Mother, is this old man my father? Although the boy is whispering, his LV8 wind release made even whispering sounds very clear for Masahiko. Before Cho could respond, Masahiko quickly replied, Young man. Stop this nonsense, you can't just pick me as your father because we have the same hair color. Cho smiled and shook her head, don't talk nonsense, I told you that your father passed away a long time ago. An elder Masahiko here is about 90 years old this year. Well, if you say so, although it is true, Masahiko felt a little bit awkward. Tobirama, on the side, whispered, Second grandpa, are you really? Dude, no. Masahiko quickly answered. Masahiko then carefully observed the 3 teenagers who come with Joe. The red-haired boy and the girl were familiar to him. They were Sasori's parents. Masahiko could easily recognize them, although they appeared as puppets in the original. 3 acquaintances of Sasori. Masahiko sighed, feeling emotional. But he didn't have any impressions on the other boy, his hair was dark blue. Masahiko thought that he would remember him if he had been mentioned in the anime. Seeing how Tobirama was arranging to send them into their rooms, Masahiko didn't stay any longer and was ready to go back and train the 5 kids. Sasori's parents, for sure, won't be weak. Unexpectedly, an umbu appeared, Lord Second, the Kirigakure shinobi has arrived. Tobirama asked, who is the leader? There's only one boy, sir. He came alone? Tobirama took a deep breath, go and bring him over. Masahiko froze. Only one? So confident? Or maybe so stupid? Either way, Masahiko became a little bit curious. Chapter 118, The Taki Cage. Inside the hokage building, Masahiko was smiling, looking at Tobirama's solemn expression. Well, don't you think that there's something wrong with your plan? So obviously, you wanted to use this joint exam to deter the shinobi world, but it seems like you've completely ignored the fact that the other villages will also show their powers. Tobirama nodded, it's due to our success in the war that I ended up underestimating them. Masahiko shook his head, what are you going to do now? That hokage Hangitsu seems very strong. The Kirigakuer representative is called the hokage Hangitsu. When Masahiko first saw him, he thought this kid was Manjutsu. Later, he thought of it again and felt like it was a little bit earlier. According to Masahiko's induction, this guy is also capable of hydration technique, so basically, physical attacks are useless against him, and this could become a problem for Maito-do, who can only use taijutsu. Tobirama then shook his head, the hokage Hangitsu is not really a problem, although taijutsu is not completely useless against, he can be damaged to some extent. The real trouble is the Tsunagakuer shinobi. The Tsunagakuer shinobi? Masahiko was surprised, Chio's son? He isn't that strong, I think Tsunade or Jiraiya can handle him. No, I'm not talking about him, I was talking about the dark blue-haired boy, and his name is Masake. As far as I know, he's qualified to be a Jonin. But Cho insisted that the boy has not been given the Jonin rank from Tsunagakuer yet. Thus he's still able to join the Jonin exam. Masahiko nodded, so she wants to play dirty, huh? They really did it, but don't worry, I don't believe he can fight with Dai when he uses the sixth door. Tobirama looked dignified, he has a Kekii Genkai, and he can use the magnet release. According to the intelligence, he's very strong, and he should have already reached the elite Jonin rank. Magnet release? Masahiko pondered and fell into deep thought for a while. Can he be the next third Kazekage? No, it doesn't feel like it at all. Did Sasori make a puppet out of him? Dark blue hair color Masahiko couldn't remember. Looking at the uneasiness in Tobirama's eyes, Masahiko shook his head, they are cheating and how about you? You said Sakumo is also a Jonin? Or is it only Orochimaru? Or should this grandpa use the transformation technique and enter the exam? Tobirama froze for a while. Second grandpa, are you trying to bully them? If you're saying so, I think it will be better to consider Orochimaru and Sakumo. You don't have to be so pessimistic, just wait until this grandpa is done with these 5 kids. Tobirama then nodded, okay, I'm counting on you then. And didn't mention what he's gonna do about Sakumo and Orochimaru. Masahiko froze for a moment, and felt like he got kicked out of the equation. Before he could talk, Tobirama said, the other villages are coming one after another. Masahiko smiled and said, the other villages are not qualified to make you worry, Lord Hokage. Tobirama shook his head, not long ago, I received a reply from Takigakuer, saying that the Takikage will come. Takikage? Masahiko was stunned and somewhat confused, didn't the Tsuchikage kill him? So the new one who has just got selected, is not busy stabilizing his village, and will come here in person? Tobirama nodded, Takigakuer's situation is a little bit weird. They almost got destroyed by Iwaigakuer. At the crucial moment, according to the intelligent, they used half of the village's savings to hire an elite shinobi to protect the village. This mercenary shinobi is said to be quite strong, but until today we have not yet detected his true identity. After the first war, Takigakuer actually continued to hire him and even gave him permission to act on behalf of the Takikage. Even I was surprised when I first heard about this. Masahiko was also surprised and pondered for a while. Maybe, this shinobi is originally from Takigakuer? Masahiko secretly said, in the original, there shouldn't be such action from the village afterward, because Kumigakuer was stronger at the time. But since we have weakened Kumigakuer, Takugakuer became ambitious, so even when their village has almost got destroyed, they still. Masahiko didn't really say anything to Tobirama about his speculation, but his suspicion was confirmed half a month later. Masahiko was stunned. Senjo Hashirama's little brother, Senjo Tobirama, bounty 80 million ryo, and elder Uzumaki Masahiko, bounty reward 0 ryo. Masahiko was initially smiling upon seeing someone from the same generation still alive, but a particular sentence made that smile on his face stiff. My bounty is 0? The black market thought that Masahiko will die naturally. Second grandpa, this guy has actually dared to show his face again in front of us. This time we can't let him escape. Kakuzu smirked then spoke, Lord Hokage, I'm here because I've accepted this mission from the Takigakuer. I come here not to assassinate you, I came on behalf of Takigakuer. However, as he was explaining, it sounded to Tobirama more like, I'm not here to assassinate you, so you can relax. Masahiko then laughed and said, forget it, you know how humiliated he was when he fails to assassinate your brother? He's become a laughingstock of every netizen. Netizen? It was clear that Tobirama didn't understand what Masahiko has said. Masahiko then asked Kakuzu, you came here on behalf of the Takigakuer? Where is your team? Kakuzu shook his head, currently, in Takigakuer, there's no shinobi eligible enough to join the Jonin exam. Tobirama clenched his teeth, then said, you really came to die then? Tobirama still bore grudge at Kakuzu because he tried to assassinate Hashirama, and when it comes to the latter, he always loses his sanity. Please calm yourself, Lord Hokage. Kakuzu looked really restrained, I'm here to inform you that Takigakuer will be my village in the future, and we will go to wars, and even do assassination missions for Konoha, as long as the price is sufficient, I will even do it myself. Masahiko was puzzled, thinking, how could this be? In the original story, Kakuzu is a lone wolf, who loves money, so when he accepted that mission to protect Takigakuer, he found out how much they can make money faster than he makes alone. Masahiko has mixed feelings, thinking that this must be the reason. So Takigakuer has turned into a mercenary village? Maybe this is the biggest change in the first war. In this case, Kakuzu might not join the Akatsuki. If Nagato stays in Uzumaki clan, I don't think there will be familiar faces in the Akatsuki. In other words, there a chance that there will be no Akatsuki. While getting lost in his though like usual, Masahiko suddenly realized that Tobirama was still arguing with Kakuzu. Masahiko sighed helplessly, then said, okay, we received your message. Kakuzu didn't say anything and just looked at Tobirama. Tobirama looked back at Masahiko, he hesitated for a long time, then he nodded. With this, Kakuzu left, but Tobirama couldn't help but ask, second grandpa, why did you? Masahiko waved his hand, and interrupted, he's strong, and maybe Konoha will need his service in the future. The key is that he has the guts to dare to assassinate anyone. Tobirama didn't know how to respond to this. Chapter 119, Cheats. Masahiko stood at Noha's training ground, while his face was dead serious. In front Masahiko is Jiraiya, Tsunade, and the 3 Uzumaki young men. Well, you've improved a lot through training these days. What improvement? Jiraiya interrupted Masahiko. Masahiko hasn't done anything yet to him, but cold stares of his training mates made him startle. Masahiko shook his head, I thought that your efforts during these days will be enough. In fact, you all should be ranked as a Jonin, so you should be happy about that. I'm a Jonin, too. Sure enough, ouch. Tsunade swiftly delivered a blow to Jiraiya, and finally, the field became quiet. Masahiko shook his head with a sigh as he watched Jiraiya limping back to his spot, not daring to even breathe. As I was saying, although your strength is good, you all know that this isn't a normal exam, and you probably know that you will face strong opponents. Jiraiya, on the side, started mumbling, I'm not afraid of any opponent, but a quick glance from Tsunade made him suffocate. The 3 Uzumaki Shinobi didn't make any remark at all, they actually didn't know much about this exam. Tsunade pondered, I heard from second grandpa, that these people are very strong. Masahiko was about to say something, but the title second grandpa threw his thoughts a bit off. Okay, I will give you a brief introduction. There's a guy from the Mist Village, his name is Hangitsu Hojiki. He has a Kekii Genkai, which is the hydrification technique. It basically makes him immune to any physical attacks. Kekii Genkai? Never mind. There are also the 3 shinobis from Sunagakuer. The red-haired boy and the brunette girl are puppet masters, but you don't have to worry about them. You just need to fight them separately, they're stronger when they combine their techniques. However, pay attention to their poison techniques. The third one is the boy with dark blue hair, and he's their winning card. He's the owner of a Kekii Genkai that can control iron sand and magnet release. By manipulating the iron sand with the magnet release, he can generate a huge attack force. Masahiko paused for a moment, to be honest, I don't see a way for you to win. Great Elder, we will work harder. Masahiko scratched his head, feeling that these boys seem to be a bit brainwashed. I will beat him if I ever encountered him. After holding it for so long, Jiraiya couldn't help but shout. This time Tsunade ignored him, but she looked a little concerned. Great Grandpa, you said that there's no chance for us to win now, right? What about 2 months from now? Masahiko got stunned for a moment, then he smiled, whispering, finally someone using his head. Tsunade's question is very good. So next, we're gonna try something else. Say, what kind of techniques you want to learn? Gambling. Masahiko blurted out, and the admiring he for Tsunade a moment ago suddenly disappeared. Tsunade, I already taught you enough of that. Old devil, can you teach me the trick to make other people fly? Jiraiya looked excited. He was obviously interested in Masahiko's technique. You can't learn it. Masahiko shook his head while smiling helplessly. That skill really can't be taught to anyone. How do you know if you don't try? Jiraiya whispered. Okay, how about you three? We will learn whatever the Great Elder is willing to teach us. They replied unanimously. Yuriko, what have you done to these kids? Alright, I will decide for you three. Jiraiya and Tsunade, go to Mito and wait for me. I will teach you some good techniques. Go to Grandma? Tsunade was stunned, then nodded, let go, idiot. Jiraiya quickly followed her, then Masahiko looked at the remaining 3 kids. Then, 3 of you, I will teach you a special Fuinjutsu from our clan. We still have 2 months, so it's up to you to master it before the deadline. After teaching the 3 Uzumaki kids, Masahiko stayed there for a while and watched them practice. He didn't go immediately to Mito's but went to another training ground in Konoha. The moment he arrived, he saw Kanikiro there training die hard, so he smiled and waved his hand at them. Sensei. Old sensei. Masahiko frowned, what did he just call him? Looking at Dai's uncle face, Masahiko hesitated a bit, then said nervously, Jay, just call me, Grandpa. After saying it, Masahiko felt embarrassed, but then he remembered that he was standing before the most 2 unashamed people in Konoha. Dai, I came for you this time. You will participate in the joint ninja exam 2 months from now, and I thought of giving you something good. No, lend you. Masahiko took a scroll out from arm sleeves, then with some distress, he handed it to Dai. Watching him turning it over and over, not knowing how to open it, Masahiko sighed helplessly. Kanikiro, teach him how to use it. Fortunately, even though Kanikiro hasn't seen this kind of scroll in years, he still could open it. A handgun appeared in Dai's hands, then Masahiko smiled, and said, this handgun is made by Yuna. It releases a very powerful shout when you inject your chakra into it. However, the recoil is lethal, don't use it without opening the hatch. Iman Tongkao. Kanikiro froze for a moment, but, sensei, Dai doesn't have any chakra. None? Masahiko was surprised. Masahiko just thought that Dai talent is just not good for ninjutsu, he didn't expect him not to have chakra. This was the case for Guy. If he has no chakra, how did he open the 8 gates in the first place? Dai, open the first gate, I want to check something. After opening the gate, Masahiko got stunned. In his perception, even when Dai opened the first gate, he still didn't have any chakras circulating in his body. It just lifts the physical restriction from his body. This is really amazing. There's no trace of chakra, and you can still practice to such a point. No wonder that using the 8 gates alone, you managed to kill 4 of the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist. Masahiko sighed, then suddenly felt that it was for the better. Dai didn't need to use any cheats, he was strong already. Forget it. Masahiko took the handgun away. Continue your hard work. The 2 men watching Masahiko as he walked away, not knowing why Masahiko changed his mind so quickly. On the way to Mito's house, Masahiko suddenly felt bad to cheat these kids before the exam. However, the things I'm gonna give Tsunade and Jiraiya will definitely help them in the future. I'm just gonna quick things up. After a while, an amazing chakra fluctuation erupted from Mito's house. Ordinary people couldn't feel it. But it took the attention of the powerful ones inside Konoha. This is startled in the Hokage building, is this Grandpa's cheat? After about half an hour, the chakra fluctuation in Mito's house has finally dissipated. Aside, Tsunade and Jiraiya, who were sitting cross-legged gathering their chakra, Masahiko and Mito, looked at them with a smile. On Tsunade's forehead, a diamond-shaped mark was formed, which was the Yin seal mark. Mito sealed 1/3 of Masahiko's chakra inside Tsunade's body, so temporarily she had a vast amount of chakra. This will also help her to learn the yin seal in the future. Jiraiya had an 8-trigram seal in his stomach, which contained some of Masahiko's senjutsu chakra, which will allow Jiraiya to turn into sage mode for around 5 minutes. This time, when they take the exam, these two kids will be more powerful. I think that they have almost caught up with Orochimaru. Mito said with a smile. Masahiko nodded, #destructive enthusiasm. Masahiko then waved his hand, I hope they can win. Chapter 120, The Written Test and the Lucky Draw. Inside a classroom on the 3rd floor of Konoha Ninja Academy, Masahiko looked at the candidates who were about to be evaluated. It has been 2 months since Masahiko activated his cheat, and the written test of the Jonin exam is about to begin. Masahiko asked for the position of the writer and the test supervisor. He wanted to observe the wonderful expressions of the candidates up close. The Jonin written exam is different than the Chunin written exam. It's not to test their common sense and basic knowledge of the shinobi, but instead, examine the shinobi's handling of unexpected situations in various tasks. The test papers had 6 questions. The first 5 are from Tobirama and the elders, while the last one is from Masahiko, and basically, each paper has different problems. There are a total of 22 participants in this test. Obviously, all of them seemed truly competent. Among them, Masahiko counted 8 from Konoha. In addition to Tsunade and Jiraiya, there were other teenagers from other major clans, and among them, there was Tsunade's friend, Dan Kato. The remaining ninjas are 3 from the Uzumaki village, 3 from Tsunagakuer, and 1 shinobi from Kirigakuer. The other 7 were uncles from other small villages. The uncles are somewhat polite. Masahiko looked at one of them from Kusagakuer, and in terms of appearance, somehow, he looks older than him. Is this some sort of inspirational story? Even at the age of 60 years old, he didn't let go of his dreams, and now he's participating in the Jonin exam along with his children and grandchildren. Masahiko felt emotional, however, he seems even weaker than Irika. Examiner, can we begin the test? One of the participants said, and gradually the room became noisy, which snapped Masahiko back from his deep thoughts, and with a look, the 22 test papers in his hand 4 went flying to each respective participant. Seeing the participant is amazed by his little trick, and calmed down, Masahiko secretly complacent. This skill is so beautiful it totally conforms to my image. Okay, each of you has got his own test paper. Now, the first 5 questions are the main ones, each score is 20 points, answer all question, and get full marks. The last question is a bonus one, but it will reduce your points if you answer it wrong, but it's also a mandatory question, so you can't just skip it. Of course, you will not be eliminated unless you don't even get 20 points in the end. But if you only get 20 points by the end of the test, your chances to participate in the last 3 combat will be higher. It must be challenging. Otherwise, you will not become a Jonin. Score deduction? Everyone inside the room was stunned, especially these uncles from the small villages. This is not the first time they hear of such a thing. However, as every one of them read their last question carefully, the room became silent. Are you kidding me? Is the Konoha joking? What kind of questions is this? Hangitsu yelled, then hit his desk and stood up. Masahiko snickered. Hangitsu's question was, if you're escorting a client in the desert, and your water reserve is gone or lost, and the client is about to die from dehydration, what will you do? It seems that you already know the answer deep inside. Don't worry, just sit down and answer slowly, Masahiko said with a smile. Masahiko assumed that Hangitsu has never done a mission in a desert, so he doesn't really know what to do. So there was only one way left. Other candidates also had the wonderful expression that Masahiko was dying to see, while others already began to write their answers. Masahiko suddenly heard a voice that startled him. It was Jiraiya moaning, looking puzzled. I can't just give him the answer. Others also started answering the questions, but Masahiko didn't have to check for cheating, because these questions basically had no standard answers. 10 minutes later, Jiraiya came to Masahiko with great enthusiasm, old devil. I have finished. Masahiko's mouth twitched, then took the test paper. He looked at his answer for a moment, then sighed. Okay, sign this paper, and then go back to your seat. Masahiko sighed secretly, I really didn't expect this. Jiraiya answered all 5 questions. For the first 5, he got 80 points, but for the last, his score got deducted by 40 points. His last question was, if the client, on purpose, put the wrong rank for the mission and halfway doing the task, you found out and confronted the client, but the client kneels and begs for your help. What will you do? This was actually the case for Naruto's first mission in the Land of Waves. Masahiko thought that Jiraiya will choose the same answer as Naruto, and continue to do the task out of sympathy. Even though a shinobi shouldn't involve his feeling in his professionalism, it's estimated his score will only be reduced by 30 points. There's no right answer to this question, and even if he chose to abandon the mission, his score would be deducted by 10 points. However, Jiraiya wrote one sentence, a task accepted by Jiraiya will always be completed. What kind of confusing self-confidence is this? Did he think that writing this will be good in the exam? Half an hour later, Masahiko received the last test paper. The answer to the final question was bizarre that Masahiko didn't know if he should laugh or cry. The highest score was Hank Su's, he got full marks. Masahiko snickered, that kid finally give up and put the answer, but I estimate that he will never do a mission in the desert for the rest of his life. Masahiko looked again at Hank Su's answer, then chuckled. Masahiko shook the empty lottery box in his hand. As an unbeatable gambler, and a person who can manipulate gravity, it was so easy for him to make the participants draw the card he wants to see. The sign of the second test will be the disappearance of the uncles. After what he called it the black box operation, he estimated that the first battles will witness the exclusion of the small villages out of the competition. In Jiraiya's case, it's a bit of a hassle. He only scored 40 points. It would have been better if he got a higher one. But there should be no problem. I don't know if he would use my senjutsu, though, Masahiko whispered. Dai has only scored 20 points? Masahiko couldn't help but cry. I made sure to choose for him the paper with the simplest questions. No wonder that with his strength, he was a forever genin. But what would you expect from a disciple that his sensei is stupid as him? Even Kanikiro wouldn't nail this test. He should be thankful that he was born earlier, or he would have also been a genin forever. At the same time, at the Sunagaku room, Mother, the red-haired boy stopped talking. Cho was shocked. Is the written test that difficult? The boy shook his head. Mother, do you like water? Cho looked puzzled. The boy explained, and Cho laughed. I believe this was Elder Masahiko's question, right? The last question for the red-haired boy was this: suppose your mother is a civilian, and due to unknown circumstances when you were doing your mission, your mother and the client were trapped inside a water cell, who will you save first? This is a classic question that Masahiko thought about in his previous life. Who will you save first, your mother or your girlfriend, if the two were about drawn at the same time? In this world, the Ninja Academy will teach you that the client is more important. Just like your girlfriend, she will use her way to teach you the same thing. Cho frowned, then thought for a while. This question. Mother, I will save you first. The boy saw how his mother was pondering and quickly answered. Cho smiled and then pat the head of his son. It's not a question of who you want to save. This question doesn't have a correct answer. Anything you will choose can't get you a full score. It's worthy of Elder Masahiko, who wanted you to express and deal with the weakness in your heart. Masahiko would be speechless if he knew that Cho gave him such an evaluation. He just wanted to drive a wedge on this mother-child annoying relationship. Chapter 121, You might lose the bet. Great Elder, we are ashamed. The three Uzumaki boys sternly said in union, making Masahiko's mouth twitch. He shook his head. It seems that Yuriko has only trained their bodies. It's okay. It was a great experience to join the Jonin exam. You will get stronger in the future. If I only estimated this, I wouldn't have wasted time teaching you Seal's technique. Got back and think about this. Practice what I've taught you every day. The three of you one day will become members of the Uzumaki police force. Yes, Great Elder. Masahiko waved helplessly, then sent them away, and went back to Konoha Colosseum. It was daytime, but there weren't a lot of people around here, only a few seal-proficient ninjas setting up enchantments. Masahiko looked around, then whispered, Hachiman Tonkao Dai, that magnet release boy, Sage Jiraiya, and Yin Seal Tsunade. I feel that this enchantment will not be effective against such people. Ah, busy life. Masahiko sighed, then began to help. Less than an hour later, civilians, audiences entered the hall one after another. Masahiko had already finished the enchantment and laid on the daimyo seat. Elder Masahiko? Just when Masahiko felt like he was about to sleep, Chio's voice woke him up. Masahiko looked up, the place was already filled with the audience, and many civilians were pointing at him. Ah, they're finally here, I almost fell asleep. Masahiko looked at the three children behind Cho and nodded. Cho took a seat next to Masahiko, then hesitated to say, Elder Masahiko, are you sitting here? It's okay, let me tell you an advice, young girl, you can act old when you're old, and that's the only benefit of being old. Anyway, 30 to 40 years from now, you will get the same treatment. Masahiko stopped, then looked behind Cho. Yo, puppet trio, how are you? Cho frowned. Elder Masahiko, I've told you yesterday that Masaki is not a puppet master. I know you did, but he will be in the future. Masahiko snickered twice without explanation. Brother Misako, are you going to be a puppet master? No. The estimated to be the third hokage looked puzzled. In the meanwhile, Tobirama came accompanied with the daimyo to the Colosseum's venue, but the latter found himself embarrassed when he didn't find a chair to sit on. Tobirama said nothing, he called an umbu with a wave of his hand and asked him to get another chair. Second grandpa, you came so early. Masahiko smiled, I've barely managed to finish the work. Tobirama nodded, sorry, I've troubled you. After a while, the umbu flashed in carrying a chair and placed it next to Masahiko, and the daimyo finally could sit. Masahiko controlled his voice to only emit in Tobirama's ears, how about now? Second grandpa was right, the daimyo has nothing in his mind. Tobirama startled for a moment. Yesterday, after the exam, Tobirama found Masahiko to take his opinion on the daimyo's intentions. Tobirama was worried whether the daimyo is still willing to support Konoha financially. Masahiko told him that the daimyo is not stupid to just stop doing that. Sure enough, Masahiko pulled this prank on him so he could see the daimyo's reaction, but he said nothing. Of course, it may be because when dealing with someone at the age of Masahiko, it's easier not to say anything. The first pair has already entered the field, it's Mato Dai and Hojiki Hangitsu. Masahiko turned his head with a smile, Cho, who do you think will win? Cho froze for a while, the kid from the Uzumaki clan can use the hydrification technique. As far as I know, that guy from Konoha can only use taijutsu. Thus, there's no doubt about who's gonna win this one. Masahiko smiled without saying a word as it turned out that odds were very unfavorable to Mato Dai. However, 10 minutes later, Dai figured out Hangitsu's ninjutsu, then opened the hatch Iman Tonkao, and even though Hangitsu used the hydrification technique, he ended up seriously injured and was carried out by the medic ninjas. Masahiko shrugged, Cho, you've guessed wrong. Cho didn't seem frustrated, she even smiled, saying, I didn't expect that he could practice the hatch Iman Tonkao to such a point. Masahiko was shocked, do you know about this technique? I was on the battlefield before, and I've played once with your disciple. Is that so? Masahiko whispered, then since you're alive, I don't think he was serious. Cho smiled and didn't show any angry expressions, fortunately, he's a merciful man. As they were talking, the second pair entered the field, which is Tsunade and an Aberame ninja. Cho, what about these two? Who will win and who will lose? Cho hesitated, it should be the Aberame ninja. Masahiko looked into the field, and the battle began. Watching Tsunade using hand signs and releasing fire releases one after another seemed really strange to Masahiko as he has never seen her use any of those in the original. The field was silent as everyone was watching the ground covered with burnt insect bodies. Masahiko had no idea how that Aberama kid could hide so many insects in his body, but they kept coming until Masahiko started feeling numbs from all of his body. However, Tsunade was fearless, even more ferocious. Masahiko remembers that in her first birthday banquet, she was frightened and even cried when the Aberame patriarch, at that time, gifted her an insect, and now she's probably getting her revenge. Even the Ying seal that Mito and Masahiko prepared to her was useless in this fight. She easily defeated the Aberame kid. Alright. The loud shout from the daimyo trembled Masahiko and made him cover his ears helplessly. It's revenge after all, huh? He turned to look at Cho, Cho, you've guessed wrong again. Cho didn't say anything, she glanced behind her, Masaki will definitely win the next one. Her tone was full of confidence. Masahiko smiled, calm down, you might end up losing another bet today. Although Cho didn't understand what he meant, she became worried. I will introduce to you, the kid who's gonna fight against your son, his name is Jiraiya, he's a civilian ninja, the tail of the crane in school. Cho was relieved, then Masaki will win. Masahiko smiled and said nothing. After half an hour, with scalded bruises, Jiraiya took a victory posture and raised his fist up to the sky, while next to him, Chio's son unconscious laying on the ground. Cho, you've guessed wrong again. Chio's expression finally changed. Elder Masahiko, the power that kid has just used shouldn't belong to him. If I've sensed correctly, it should be your chakra, this. Masahiko waved his hand. Well, you've let an actual Jonin take the exam, but I just gave a Chunin something good to help him. Why are you acting so dissatisfied? You're the ones who've started it. Mother, the red-haired boy came over. Cho looked back at him, and after a while, she let out a sigh relief. It's okay, you two got and check on Masaki, he didn't suffer any serious injuries. Masahiko nodded. However, Masaki did a great job. You should be proud, knowing that I've landed our boy some external force. Moreover, Masaki is still young, although he's older than Jiraiya, who knows what the future is hiding for me. Regardless, I should thank you for our victory today. Those who you bet against me to lose today all won. Cho was both shocked and puzzled. Chapter 122, Mount Mayaboku. For the time being, I'm gone. In the hokage office, Masahiko carrying his bag said these few words to Tobirama. Notify me when the next hokage is selected, I will come over. It has been a week since the Jonin joint exam is over, and all the teams from the other villages have basically left the Konoha. Masahiko felt like he should be prepared for Zetsu. Counting the day, Kushina should be almost 1.5 years old now, and Masahiko also wanted to see how she looked like when she was a child. Second Grandpa, are you really not going to stay for some time? Masahiko frowned. Since the time he came to Konoha, he doesn't know the reason, but Tobirama always seemed like he wanted him to stay longer. He hadn't had time to ask what was happening, so he hurriedly ran outside. Sensei, Elder Masahiko. Hiruzen, Tsunade and Orochimaru broke in breathless. Tobirama glanced at them for a while. What's happened? Hiruzen sighed, and embarrassedly said, Sensei, he's gone. Half day ago. Hiruzen and Orochimaru finished the specialized training and returned to Konoha. Jiraiya and Tsunade greeted him at the entrance of Konoha. Jiraiya couldn't wait to show off and gab about how he became a Jonin in front of Orochimaru. He also claimed that he had made great strides, and he no longer considered Orochimaru as a worthy rival. As a result, Orochimaru calmly showed him his new harvest, a gigantic summoned snake that stagnated Jiraiya. He longed for Tsunade's comfort, but she also calmly said that after becoming a Jonin, she finally signed her contract with the slugs and summoned a huge one. At that moment, he could only look at Hiruzen with a look of expectation, and the result. Hiruzen said that he could sign a snake contract like Orochimaru, or ask Elder Masahiko to let him sign the slug scroll. But Jiraiya threw one sentence, I don't need it, and stormed off. Then what? Tobirama said lightly. Hiruzen couldn't help but swallow. He somehow found a summoning scroll and used reversed summoning, but we don't know where it has sent him. Sensei, some summoning beasts are very cruel. Even if he's okay for now, he won't be if he stays for so long. Sensei, since you have a space ninjutsu, can you use it to perceive his chakra fluctuation in the space? Tobirama shook his head, I can't do this kind of thing. Then he looked at Masahiko, do you have any idea? Masahiko secretly said, of course I have a way to find him, but I don't have to think about it, he must have gone to Mount Mayaboku. Hesitated for a moment, Masahiko threw his luggage on Tobirama's desk, don't worry, I probably know where he went, I will go to find him. Hiruzen looked relieved, please. Masahiko flew straight out, thinking in his mind, if I help Jiraiya signs the Toad Scrolls, I will be able to get some witness points. As for the location of Mount Mayaboku, he bit his finger, summoning technique. Master Slug, do you know the location of Mount Mayaboku? Masahiko thought, as one of the three great immortals, the sage slug should know the location of Mount Mayaboku. The three locations are actually in the same land. Masahiko was stunned. How? From the Shikotsu forest head deep into the south, and you will find Mount Mayaboku. Take north, and you will find Ryakai Cave. Of course, there's an entrance that doesn't have anything to do with the Shikotsu forest, but I don't know about its specific location. Masahiko nodded, released the summoning technique, and turned to fly toward the Shikotsu forest again. When he came to Shikotsu forest, Masahiko simply greeted Katsuyu, then he quickly flew south, worrying that he would miss the moment when Jiraiya signs the contract. As he flew toward the south, Masahiko's brows became tighter and tighter, and the environment became humid and cold. This distance, Masahiko whispered, he has been flying for more than half an hour, according to the distance, he should have left the land of fire. Are the three sage regions really is an independent space? 1 hour later, Masahiko gradually began to feel that the weather around him is fresher. Suddenly he felt something strange, then looked up to find himself in an entirely another world. Is this Mount Mayaboku? Masahiko sighed emotionally. Unlike the dark and damp Shikotsu forest, Mount Mayaboku seemed to have birds and flowers. Bird? Masahiko froze, but it eats worms. Toads also feed on the bugs around here, even if it originally existed, they would be driven out by the toads. Masahiko looked into the distance, the layers of mountains completely obscured his vision. However, the large plants on the mountain made elegant scenery like a paradise. So Kagura's eyes. With one seal, Masahiko opened his perception to the maximum. Jiraiya is over there. There are no chakra fluctuations beside him. No toad means no contract. Masahiko sighed in relief, the witness points are not gone. However, he suddenly looked surprised while twitching the corner of his mouth. This chakra is a bit insane. Masahiko just felt an unusually massive chakra. The most powerful chakra he has ever felt. Not only the most powerful but also too huge. Is this really okay? Dozens of times bigger than the Kyuubi? Does the Juubi even have such a big chakra? Masahiko smiled bitterly, is this the great toad sage? Masahiko felt the chakra of the slug sage up close, and he doesn't think now that it can be compared to him, the great toad sage. Even though the slugs are not good at fighting, but the three immortal sages shouldn't have such a big gap, the snake sage shouldn't be this strong too. Is it really an only expectation for the great toad sage? Masahiko shook his head. As a sage who can predict the future, he should know about my arrival, so it's better to go ahead and gain insight. At the same time, in the highest peak of Mount Mayaboku on a huge shallow pool of water with the kanji for sage inscribed on it, a big old toad wearing the necklace has the kanji oil written on it, was sleeping inside it. He moaned while the big bubble that was coming out of his nose was getting bigger and bigger. Suddenly it popped, and he opened his eyes. Two little toads appeared in front of him. Master, are you awake? It was Fukazaku and Shima. The boy I have foreseen hundreds of years ago, who will come to Mount Mayaboku, has arrived. You go and bring him in. There's also a guest, Uzumaki Masahiko. You also go and bring him in. As Masahiko was approaching Jiraiya's location, he suddenly frowned. He felt that the latter started moving away at top speed, and went deep into Mount Mayaboku. Hi! A little toad appeared beside him. It was Fukazaku. Yo, Grandpa Toad, Masahiko said with a smile. After so many years, he finally found someone older than him. Uzumaki Masahiko, the great toad sage, is waiting for you. Masahiko was stunned. He even knows my name? It seems that the great toad sage had some prophecy about me. But what kind of prophecy? An old-timer, who wants to change the world. Or it could be. Masahiko tried to guess following the footsteps of Fukazaku, who was heading deep into Mount Mayaboku. Chapter 123, Prophecy. Following the speed of Fukazaku toward the center of Mount Mayaboku, Masahiko used his perception ability. There are 30 or 40 creatures with chakra reactions. The chakra was flowing strangely, and Masahiko wasn't sure. Mount Mayaboku is also a small ninja village, with ninja toads, and civilian toads. Climbing to the peak, a palace appeared in front of Masahiko and sensed that there's chakra inside. Masahiko observed the place with a strange look on his face. Fukakusu, why the palace is built like this, what's the wisdom behind it, eat yourself? In Mount Mayaboku, everything is on the shape of a toad, even this palace, and the entrance is the mouth of a toad too. How did you know that my name is Fukazaku? The question of the old toad made Masahiko's face stiff. Haven't you told me that? From the very beginning until now, I only said one thing to you, and I never told you my name. Masahiko smiled awkwardly. Who knows? Maybe you've said it. Or maybe it's something I have dreamed of. This time, Fukazaku looked strangely at him. You even know the ability of the master? Masahiko was stunned, and just when he wanted to pull something else, another old lady toad came. Old devil, why are you here? Jiraiya then noticed the Toad Palace. What the hell is this? Masahiko sighed, this is hell. I've just died. But I've never expected that these toad ghosts will bring you here too when you're still so young. Jiraiya got frightened, no one told me that when someone uses the reverse summon technique, he goes to hell. I'm so young I don't want to die. Jiraiya said this, then suddenly reacted, old devil, you're lying to me, right? How can a ghost be a toad? Jiraiya looked around, they even have genders, this one is an old man, and this one is an old woman. Shima and Fukazaku glanced at each other, then the latter said, boys, the great toad sage is waiting for you, please come in. Boys, Masahiko's expression stiffened. He was almost 100 years old. But he actually called him a kid, but knowing that these two are nearly 800 years old, Masahiko still endured. Masahiko entered into the Toad Palace feeling disgusted. In the palace, Masahiko finally saw the great toad sage lying on his huge shallow pool of water, while his eyes closed as if he was sleeping. Jiraiya seemed like curious babies looking left and right. Masahiko wasn't curious about any of the things surrounding him, he was fully focused. He wasn't worried about what the great toad sage will do to him, and even if the amount of chakra is incomparable, battles are always unpredictable. Masahiko was worried that his influence and own existence has changed the great toad sage's prophecy. In his past life, although the great toad sage didn't have a lot of scenes, every prophecy was successfully fulfilled, especially the child of the prophecy. Young man, you're finally here. He didn't know when, but the great toad sage opened his eyes and stared at Jiraiya. Jiraiya wiped the sweat off his forehead and then turned his head and whispered, he turned out to be alive. Masahiko also was worried. Obviously, he didn't pay attention to the two's rudeness, and said, hundreds of years ago, I foreseen that one day, you will come to Mount Mayaboku, and sign a contract with my clan. Contract? Jiraiya startled, old devil. You've been lying to me, this is not hell. Masahiko was stunned for a long time, he didn't know if he should laugh or cry. Jiraiya said he didn't believe him, but he still did believe half of it deep inside. Fukazaku, bring the contract scroll. Yes. Hey, I haven't agreed yet. Jiraiya's words got cut short because Masahiko closed his mouth using gravity. Masahiko smiled, great toad sage, he agrees. Jiraiya couldn't say anything. Hearing Masahiko's words, he turned his eyes to him and pondered for a moment. Who are you? Masahiko's face turned dark, what the hell? He called me, then forgot when I am, he's really old. Jiraiya on the side was twitching weirdly. Masahiko turned faintly at him to see that he was suffocating. He startled, then quickly lifted the gravity. Who you, old devil, are you trying to kill me? Masahiko smiled embarrassingly, he kept thinking about the great old toad, and almost suffocated Jiraiya. The great toad sage kept pondering, so Shima tried to remind him, Master, he's Uzumaki Masahiko, you called him over. Uzumaki Masahiko. The great toad sage froze, I remembered. Masahiko smiled, is there any prophecy about me? What is it about? The terminator of tragedy, or the reliable old predecessor? In my vision, you will fight a young man with the same eyes as Haguro Moatsutsuki, bringing disaster and destruction. Masahiko's smile slowly faded away, fighting a young man with Rinnegan? Disaster and destruction? How can this be? Masahiko's heart gradually sank in despair. It should be Madara, the one who has Rinnegan. That is to say, he will be successfully resurrected, and his opponent will be me? Why would it be me? What about Naruto and Sasuke? Is it because I changed the plot too much? Just when Masahiko was about to ask, the great toad sage said, I did foresee the outcome of the battle, but I can see that while you're fighting, a fierce battle is taking place elsewhere. Is there more than one opponent? Masahiko frowned, who is the other? Obito. Impossible. This thing will not happen if there's no accident. Great toad sage, do you see who my opponent is? Masahiko hesitated, then asked. I hope it won't be Nagato or even Sasuke. Masahiko whispered in his heart. I didn't clearly see who he was, he shook his head, I only saw that he has a black hair. Masahiko's heart tightened, not Nagato then. He has also had a bun hairstyle. Bun? Who is that? A lot of faces passed in Masahiko's mind, but none of them met the description. He has the Rinnegan, but he's neither Madara nor Sasuke. Masahiko was confused. Sure enough, I changed the plot too much, I'm afraid something I don't know will happen. Next to him, Jiraiya signed the contract scroll and didn't resist anymore. He could see from Masahiko's behavior that this should be a powerful summoning beast. The signing of Jiraiya's contract also brought Masahiko 10 witness points, but he didn't care. Who the hell is he? We're gonna fight in the future, and what I feel from the Great Toad Sage's words, we are going to be evenly matched? Masahiko fell into deep thinking. Chapter 124, Tobirama's Request. Old devil, I'm lucky that you've come. Otherwise, I would have ended up eating bugs. It has been almost a month since Jiraiya signed the contract. He and Masahiko are still staying in Mount Mayaboku. Initially, Masahiko planned on leaving the moment he gets his witness points, but that prophecy made him feel a little bit uneasy. Thus, he decided to stay for a while and see if the Great Toad Sage would wake up and give him other predictions. An entire month has passed, and Jiraiya had mastered that art of summoning quickly, but the Great Toad Sage still didn't wake up. Looking at Jiraiya in front of him, Masahiko sighed. Since that time he ended up eating grass at Shikotsu Forest, Masahiko carried food on him sealed in a scroll wherever he went. However, a month later, staying with gluttonous King Beelzebub here, his food resources were entirely exhausted. Note, gluttonous King Beelzebub is a reference from the manga That Time I Got Reincarnated as Slime. Beelzebub, gluttonous king, is one of Rimuru Tempest's ultimate skills. It had been created from the unique skills Gluttony and Heartless during Rimuru's Harvest Festival. Jiraiya, aren't you going to leave? If you stay any longer, the guys in Konoha will be worried about you. Jiraiya looked surprised. Wait, I thought we're staying? Masahiko's face stiffened and almost cursed himself for being such a careless old man. Jiraiya has only learned the art of summoning. If he forces him to leave, he might not get another chance to learn the sage mode. Then I will just. When Masahiko was about to leave alone, Fukazaku appeared beside him. Jiraiya-chan, Great Safe has woke up, and asked you to come. This month, Jiraiya has been getting along well with the Toad clan members. With such a simple call, Jiraiya followed Fukazaku to the Toad Palace. Masahiko frowned. Didn't the Great Sage ask for me? Fukazaku shook his head gravely, then left with Jiraiya. So, there aren't any more prophecies about me, huh? Masahiko felt strangely relieved. He really wanted to know more about his destiny in this world, but after thinking about it, the less he knows, the better. Masahiko didn't follow him this time and just waited. Jiraiya will tell him everything anyway. After more than an hour, Jiraiya came back with his head upright. The look of pride was evident in his expression. Masahiko was stunned and asked, "Why are you so happy? Did the Great Sage praise you?" Jiraiya nodded. He said that I'm gonna become a great shinobi, and one day one of my disciples will be the child of destiny, and he will end the war in the shinobi world. He said, then he shook his head regretfully. It's a pity, why didn't I become the child of destiny? Masahiko took a deep breath, then muttered, thank God. In the past few days, he was worried that Minato won't meet Kushina, and Naruto will not be born, but this is great news. It's not a pity, you will be the teacher of the child of destiny, that's already cool. Well, I guess you're right. In the end, Jiraiya accepted it. Let's go back to Konoha. Masahiko wasn't worried about Jiraiya anymore, he will surely fulfill his destiny. Thus, he said lightly, then flew him toward the exit. Hey, hello, old devil, why are you taking me with you? I can just ask Fukazaku to summon me back to Konoha. Masahiko didn't answer, and secretly said, you want me to go to that cold and wet place all by myself? Or are you asking me to hold Fukazaku's old toad butt during reverse summoning? Not in a million-year, kid. As the place was becoming darker and darker around them, Jiraiya's mouth twitched. Old devil, where are you flying? The exit of Mount Mayaboku is not in this direction. Masahiko's face got pale. He kept thinking about Fukazaku's old toad butt, while flying toward Shikotsu Forest, and completely forgot that Mount Mayaboku should also have an exit on its own. However, he certainly wouldn't admit it. So he pretended to sing, Shalala Itsuka Kito, Boku wa Teni Surunda, Hakanaki Mun ni Soto, Hakari Moat Yuki. Completely ignoring Jiraiya, Masahiko speeded up. Hey, old devil, are you hearing? Shalala idoshiki hit anata mo mayati aruni mame witsuki ga soto ashita o terashite. Why did you start signing anyway? Tsuyoku Masahiko smirked upon noticing that Jiraiya forgot about the main subject, then he winked at him inviting him to sing along. Tsuyoku Jiraiya completely ignored him. Kagayite. Finally, what a terrible song, Jiraiya said while covering his ears. Well, you hate, because they completely left you out of this ops video clip. What? Jiraiya was so confused. Regardless, Masahiko was very happy now knowing that the prophecy of the Child of Destiny still exists. As for the dark-haired young man with the bun, he didn't really care, because even if he couldn't beat him, it won't be a big deal, he will just wait for Naruto to save the day, then they will sing together. Masahiko was quiet the entire way, he only greeted Katsuya when he reached Shikotsu Forest. During the rest of the road, he flew at high speed. This time Masahiko didn't fly directly into the hokage building but landed at the Konoha's main gate. Jiraiya, go find your teammates and teacher, you were missing for a month, they should be so worried about you. Jiraiya didn't answer Masahiko because he ignored him the entire time, and left happily, thinking of showing off his cool summoning beast to Tsunade and Orochimaru. Masahiko greeted the two ninjas who were guarding the gate, then walked into the hokage building step by step. The sky was getting slightly dimmer, but Tobirama's chakra was still inside the building. Masahiko nodded at the umbu on the door, then walked in. Second Grandpa, you're finally back, was it a smooth journey? Masahiko scoffed, of course, how could it fail when I was the one who's appointed for it? However, since everything is okay, I'm leaving this time. Tobirama hesitated for a moment, but he didn't say anything. Masahiko shook his head, what? Are you thinking of something else to make me stay? Tobirama smiled bitterly, shaking his head. Speak already, why do you want me to stay? Masahiko smiled, he was actually very curious at this point. Tobirama took a deep breath, then said, Second Grandpa, can you give me a sample of your blood? Masahiko's smile gradually faded away. Orochimaru asked him the same thing, it seems that everyone wants to live longer. But the way Tobirama asked it, gave Masahiko a bad hunch. Your body. Tobirama smiled bitterly, I still can't hide anything from you. My body has deteriorated in the past 2 years. That's why I'm rushing to select the next hokage. Did that injury affected you? I'm sorry, it's really my fault, Masahiko sighed, my cells won't be as useful as your elder brother's. There's another reason for my long lifespan. Tobirama lowered his head, is that so? Watching that pitiful look on Tobirama's face, Masahiko shook his head, it's okay, just wait until this grandpa gets strong, I will definitely resurrect you and your elder brother. Tobirama sighed, I'm not afraid of death. It's such a pity really, I only need another 10 years, and I might by then be able to completely develop the Edo Tensei and resurrect Big Brother, no, maybe even less, 5 years. Masahiko shook his head bitterly, it won't work even after 100 years. Looking at him, Tobirama seemed puzzled, thus, Masahiko explained, although that ninjutsu can resurrect people, they will always be bonded to the afterlife. It will need a lot of power to break that bond. Your grandpa here can do it. But for some reason, I can't shake out the feeling that I will need to be much stronger than this if I'm gonna do it. Masahiko knew for sure that if he ever successfully resurrected the dead, Hage Oromo would be knocking on his door then next day. Tobirama pondered, is that the case? Chapter 125, The Third Hokage. In the end, I still had to stay in Konoha. Masahiko sighed, watching the two Hyuga twins practicing the gentle fist. After he knew that Tobirama doesn't have much time left, Masahiko chose to stay. Deep inside, only a few people he considers family are alive, namely Tobirama, Mito, and his 3 disciples. As for Kenji, Mashirama, Tsunade, and Yuna, they were still young, although they also have a special place in his heart, it was the kind of relationship where he always trying to take good care of them. As for the Uzumaki clan, because of the unreliability he saw in the 3 kids who took the Jonin joint exam previously, Masahiko had to send a shadow clone back to the clan for personal guidance. I can't protect them forever, I eliminated every threat that came near us in the Second Shinobi World War, but one hope they will get stronger and have the power to protect the clan in the Third Shinobi World War. Masahiko believed that this was necessary. After returning from Mount Myaboku, nearly half a year passed. 26 years have passed since the establishment of Konoha, but Masahiko did not have time to chill. His attributes have reached the limit and can no longer improve, so he focused all of his energy on the Gentle Fist. After half a year of concentration, Masahiko raised the Gentle Fist level to LV6, close to reaching LV7. Gentle Fist LV6, 588,990. LV6 Gentle Fist. After he confirmed it, Masahiko discovered that the hokage Patriarch level was also close to him, but when he asked for the Gentle Fist's secret techniques, he found that there's no way for him to practice it. He can't change his eyes, it's not worth it. To be honest, he never wanted to be a Kugan, and certainly, he doesn't like to be a bird in a cage, he really likes to fly. However, the experience value is so high, just like the other attributes, so I'm assuming the Gentle Fist technique might also grant me a good surprise. This thought is what actually encouraged him to continue practicing the Gentle Fist. In front of him, the two little boys had already finished their routines and stood there looking at him eagerly, seeking some guidance. However, they didn't know how far Masahiko's thoughts drifted, and how he wasn't paying any attention to what the two were doing. Practice is good, but I'll say it again for you, you must discover your weaknesses. Masahiko suddenly stopped there, and a familiar Umbu appeared in front of them. Masahiko smiled. Sakumo, what's the matter? Grandpa Masahiko, Hokage-sama is looking for you. In the past half year, Sakumo learned to address Masahiko by Grandpa to make the delivery of the information smoother. Tobirama is looking for me? Masahiko pondered, then nodded, I understand. Sakumo turned, then Masahiko murmured emotionally, it should be about the selection of the third Hokage. He came to the Hokage building, to unexpectedly find the three elders gathered there. The three elders shared the same appearance, old, grumpy, and they all had white hair. The youngest Uchiha Izumi was 57 years old. Except of the hokage Patriarch, who saw Masahiko from time to time, the other two seemed complex. Grandpa Masahiko, you look healthy. Uchiha Izumi spoke slowly. Masahiko nodded with a smile, it seems so. Masahiko knew that although they don't know his exact age, they probably guessed that he was at least 90 years old. But it's just that. As for why Masahiko has such a long lifespan, how strong he's, or even what special seal technique the Uzumaki has might have caused this, they didn't know, and obviously, they couldn't just ask. Tobirama is not that easy to speak to, and no one can actually understand Masahiko's gibberish. Seeing how everyone became quiet, Tobirama took the initiative to speak. I assume that everyone in this room has already speculated the reason behind this gathering. Soon we will have the anniversary of establishing this great village. After that, a new Hokage will take my place, and this elder council will be dissolved. The three elders didn't object, and Masahiko didn't intervene. Tobirama looked right and left, then said, for the third Hokage position, I nominate two candidates, Hiruzen and Danzo. What are your thoughts? The three elders looked at each other. Izumi seemed irresolute, but he shook his head and didn't say anything. He had some hope in his heart that Kagamiya would become the Hokage, but he knew that it was just a wish. It's a pity that Naruto Patriarch's successor is not the kind of genius. Among Tobirama's 6 apprentices, he wasn't even compared to a civilian ninja such as Mito Kato, he was only slightly stronger than Yuditen, who was actually a medic shinobi. As for the Hyuga Patriarch, he was too embarrassed to even mention his so-called successor, which made him feel desperate. Since this is the case, I will ask all of you to work on the arrangement. Also, inform all the other clans and see if they have any candidates they want to nominate. Tobirama added. Masahiko froze for a while. Tobirama, it seems that you have nothing to say to me, then why did you call me over? Second Grandpa, there's another thing I want to say. I'm hoping during what is left in my tenure that we can officially work on arranging an alliance with the Uzumaki clan. Masahiko was stunned. Tobirama was worried about the village in the next war because Konoha lacked relationships, and Masahiko no longer contributes, and the Uzumaki eventually parted ways with Konoha over the years. Masahiko shook his head. No, Mito is still here in his heart. He knows that the Uzumaki and Konoha will have a strong relationship in the next years because of Minato and Kushina, so a piece of paper won't do them any good. Tobirama hesitated for a moment, then he seemed to understand Masahiko's words. Okay then. With this, the elder meeting ended, which happened to be the last meeting of these elders. 1 month later, Masahiko was watching Sarutobi wearing the hokage robe and hat while feeling slightly stunned. Masahiko watched him stand on the stage and preach to all the residents of Konoha, civilians and shinobis alike, when the tree leaves dance, one shall find flames. The fire's shadow will illuminate the village, and once again, tree leaves shall bud anew. To those who possess the will of fire, everyone is family. The desire to protect one's family builds a thicker and stronger bond between each and everyone in the village. This familiar figure and familiar words made Masahiko's thoughts drift away. The ceremony was over, and the civilians gradually left, then Sarutobi accepted the blessings of Mito, and his other teammates and students. Danzo was also around, a little unwilling, but Masahiko also noticed a slight heartfelt joy and blessing. Danzo, what exactly changed that cold conspirator guy? The long-awaited Chinese characters finally popped up and interrupted Masahiko's anticipations. Witness and slightly change the main story of Naruto World, the election of the third Hokage, get 30*2, witness points. So, it's only a small change this time? Masahiko thought for a moment, then nodded. If I let Danzo become the Hokage, I assume I would have rewarded with 300 witness points, but it is still good that it has ended like this. Time flows, and Masahiko got some unexpected gains. Because of that little incident between him and Uchiha Kagame, Sarutobi's council was changed from the original, except for Danzo, the other two changed, and they were Uchiha Kagame and Hyuga twins' father. This change actually granted Masahiko 20 witness points. Sure enough, the close to the original plot, the more events I can get witness points. If the plot doesn't collapse, I will probably